ahead and start.
Everyone's silence.
All right, so we were going to start by talking about establishing shots. We've gone over shots quite a bit. I'm going to share my screen again. We've gone over like the different kinds of shots quite a bit, but I was just going to touch on like establishing shots and how important they are and go over some of the notes. Does anybody, want to explain what an establishing shot is? Or
isn't an establishing shot like to establish the scene? Yeah,
it's just like to establish where it is, or like in reference to the character, how big they are compared to the rest, or like how long they have to go, that kind of thing.
That makes sense, and it kind of sets the whole scenery, which is kind of nice too. You can get some nice, beautiful establishing shots.
It's also, it's definitely, and it's also used to establish the tone, like like this is kind of like a red and blue, so it's kind of like a futuristic kind of feel to it. I'm not exactly sure, but that's what I get just from looking at this picture alone. It's just that it's kind of like a futuristic feel, and it has, there's like a kind of like a downtown city area, so maybe not the best area, but it's just to kind of establish like what you're going for your scene. Are you going for something kind of creepy? The movement of the establishing shot has a lot to do with it too. If it's just static, or if it's handheld will make it shake a little bit more, give it more of a creepy feel. If it's just like, if it's just a slow dolly in, it's kind of just bringing us into the scene.
I like that. Yeah, that reminds me of what's it called? What is it? Not Gone Girl. This ghost movie that looks like the establishing shot from I can't remember the name of it. It's like this one where it's like about a haunted house. That's what that reminds me.
Like the house is like alive, or no?
It comes alive, I think. Yeah, it ends up being, what was it? The ghost was
the Eddie Murphy one?
Huh?
Is it the Eddie Murphy one?
No, it's not with Eddie Murphy. It was with, I can't remember it at all. It wasn't a bad movie. It's just,
I think Haunted House for some reason. I think of the Haunted Mansion just because that was like one of the first scary movies I ever watched.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was one of those like newer, like within the last 5 years, ghost woman. It was a ghost woman movie where she's in there with like, she gets married into the house, and it's like an interesting story with it too, and it's told in an interesting way. It's like creepy, but it's not, it's done like very artistically creepy as well. So it's kind of like, I liked it for that reason. And that's why that establishing shot reminded me of it, because it had a lot of really pretty shots in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's creepy, if that makes any sense. It was part of, yeah,
and I'm sure like if we were to study it, it would have like a creepy feel. Horror movies often like do it like very subtly, but they give you that kind of the
pretty creepy
feeling that makes you feel kind of on edge, or something's not quite right.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, but like every shot, like even in the house, like the shots were like with the stairs and stuff were just all really pretty, and like the characters were all like nice, like so it was kind of cool that way.
Yeah, it's cool.
See that, because sometimes you see like a horror movie and they really make it look purposefully more dank and ugly too, like that style, right? So there's a couple different styles. So. Which I like that as well too, but you can find beauty in that in a different way. But
like some have different movements that really tell you what's going on, and some just sit still and let the stuff jump out at you. So, like it's just like anything else. It's like really get creative with it in tons of different ways. But some of the things they said, just like when you're trying to get an establishing shot, just envision what the shot is, what you want, what are you trying to convey to the audience? Are you trying to make it creepy? Are you trying to make it, like very smooth? Are you trying to make it sunny and warm feeling? What are you trying to convey in the scene before you even get into your actual scene? What is it going to be about? So you want to start it off with the establishing shot to give it that kind of.
And it's fun too when you have like a generalized theme too, because then all the teams, like props, costumes, everything else, they have a made in, they make it all match the theme, so that when you like set dress it and it like just like looks phenomenal, and then And then by the time like you bring the camera in, it's just like everything's just so, you know.
Yeah, like and
I love
so
it.
like especially in like something like a fantasy, they give you that
That's
feeling
even
of
more
the
fun.
city like this right here, and then you go in and you see like the citizens are wearing similar colors. There's like a flag that might look similar, or symbol or signal that has that. It just
That's
like,
true.
it kind of matches the whole feel of whatever you're trying to convey.
True, but even like city shots or like everyday stuff, like it's still kind of fun too. It's like all in the details, but obviously when you get into more fantasy stuff, you just get to be even more creative. So it just
Like something like that. Yeah, it's just like for the city shots, it's mainly just to kind of convey like where it's taking place, more like the generic one, kind of like this one.
But then you get to like do the like if it's shot in an apartment or like a room, right? So then they get to deck it out, or if like even if it's like fake studio, but you know still it's all decked out.
Yeah, and they also showed how you can make an establishing shot and actually turn that into the scene as well. Like if you start with the establishing shot of a road and you bring a car in, and then your characters are in the car and you just kind of move your camera along with them, you can all of a sudden be in the scene. So it's like an establishing shot transition that goes straight into the scene instead of cutting to something else.
That's true.
Which is also cool.
Yeah, I just did props this weekend on a short.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It was pretty fun.
But yeah, they just said, you know, like with anything else, plan it, make sure you know about the location you're trying to shoot. If you're trying to use a drone to get the shot, make sure that you're allowed to fly in that area. If you're trying to make sure you know where the sun is, you might want to like research the sun's trajectory of that location and see, you know.
Yeah, apparently no drone shots in DC.
What?
You said no drone shots in DC apparently.
Yeah, no, not anywhere near airports. Like, they're very big on not having anyone fly those around there.
That's
Especially
funny.
like Brian was talking about last week, because it's just financials. I'm not financials. It's just, you know, security reasons. But yeah, I mean, like that's pretty much all I wanted to share, is just kind of going a little deeper into establishing shots, kind of seeing like how they can be made to give a certain feeling. Does anybody have any comments or questions on establishing shots?
It seems like you could use the that blue and red shot you showed us.
The one at the beginning. Yeah, let me go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like you could also use the establishing shot to start directing the viewer's eye. Like, you know, the red's interesting, cooler on your eyes. So maybe that's more a place where the action might start, because it's like a little more inviting.
Yeah. Or because the blue stands out, it could also be something that's like the blue is more important. It just, I guess it depends. It also, that would depend really on like where the camera's moving, probably, to get you like the sense of where to look.
That's fine. Yeah. You could start picturing all sorts of scenes in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that example as an establishing shot, just like kind of like an artistic way of directing the eye with the lighting.
Yeah, it looks almost like if you put on 3D glasses, this thing would just pop out. It's kind of the feeling.
Yeah.
That's already fun.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's like, is it as necessary to use an establishing shot if the characters have already been to that place in a previous scene?
It depends. Like, so I would say like you shouldn't have to use it every single time. It's up to, you know, whatever you feel is right. But just if you have a lot of locations in your film or in your show, like Game of Thrones, like if Game of Thrones wasn't showing,
especially transition wise, I feel like you would need a transition shot that makes sense. So if they're going to a new place, to that place again.
Like as a transition, it's usually good to just kind of show a different part of that same scene. And it goes back, and especially because like if you're cutting between different scenes, sometimes there's a different tone. Like you'll have a different tone from one side of one character's point of view will be over on this side of the world, while this character's point of view is over here. So to set the tone a little better, to transition into that tone adjustment, you might want to do some establishing shots back and forth. But like with Game of Thrones, like even though you know that, you know, Jon Snow is in Winterfell, you still kind of want to see Winterfell just to be sure that you're understanding where he is, or if he's.
They transition back and forth between the different kingdoms, and they show you, okay, now we're here, now we're there, because you go back and forth so much.
But I would say that I have seen movies that overuse transitions as well. So.
And it gets repetitive and like, okay, we get it, or uncreative.
I think that's the part. I think it's just mainly for me, it's about like, if you're creative with the establishing shots, even if it's the same location, it's still cool. But if it's always like those movies that just kind of show the city and then say like LA or like New York or whatever, and then it just starts to get boring, I think.
Yeah.
Moscow, Russia.
Well, unless
like the Marvel movies.
Yeah,
I
like
think we all know what
like
you're
I think
hinting
James
at.
Bond did a lot of that, and it's just kind of it's like the same shot, but it just has a different title.
It gets a little repetitive.
Yeah.
Like the Bourne Identity movies.
Yeah, I think they do a lot of that where it's like showing the city and then just having like a title over it that says what city they're in. Chicago.
I mean,
Yeah, I guess it's become a bit of an action trend.
yeah. I kind of still works in the Bourne Identities because they're going so fast sometimes. But then
yeah, no, it does. I was just like, I don't know, but it just feels like it's the same shot. Like it's going from left to right.
Like what he's saying is you can show the same place with different angles, different corners of it, different parts of it, you know. Like they showed, there's a video, I think that's the one you told me to save, honey, to send to them later, where he basically shows how to shoot a shot of a house in multiple different ways that you could go about having an establishing shot of that house.
I think it was like an old castle, but yeah.
Oh yeah, like it looked like a tiny, yeah.
But one good example I would say is kind of like Lord of the Rings. Even though you're jumping all over the place, they're doing, you know where you're at because they do an establishing shot that kind of moves the camera around in the 3D world. Like they're going from the top of the tower to the bottom, or they start from the field going into the city. And so it still establishes the scene, but it does it in a different, unique way so that it doesn't get repetitive.
Yeah, I like that. Although I think sometimes, like, if you are really playing like the story, you might, like, somebody creating film might just do something that's more standard to just quickly do a quick establisher because it's like less about the environment and more about quickly telling the story, which makes sense. Though I do think like being creative adds to it as well, but I guess it just depends on like what the idea is behind that, because I think there's a time and a place to use something in certain areas so that it doesn't catch your eye as much, right? So if you're doing more standard establishing shots, you don't, like, the viewers aren't going to be paying as much attention to it. It's just going to be part of the story, versus like if you're creating a movie where you really want to emphasize different, beautiful shots and like just have that as being part of like the way the movie is being told.
Well, it doesn't even have to be beautiful. It can still kind of go along with the story. Like
that's true, yeah.
Part of the Lord of the Rings thing was just showing the scale of like how high up they were or how big the thing was. So then they would do it in different ways to capture like the, I don't know, like capture those different moments and feelings. Like when Gandalf's up on the tower, they start from the top and go all the way down to show you the tower. And then it's like, wow, he's up really, really high, So it's just like, I feel like there's a way you can do it creatively while also conveying the message that you want to tell in your story.
That's true. I mean, yeah, I agree that you can always do that for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and move on though. The next thing we're going to talk about is the shooting script. Does anybody know what shooting script is?
Mm-hmm. The script you shoot with.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, so you write a script, you write a spec script, and you if it gets sold or if you're going to make it yourself, you might have a few things in there that aren't exactly like a spec script, but in a spec script, you are just writing it to get the story across. You're not really writing it with too many camera directions, too many character dialogue directions, unless it's like very vital to the story. You are just trying to convey, you're just trying to tell a story in a screenplay format. But once it becomes a shooting schedule, it's usually the director and the cinematographer work together to look at the script and create this shooting schedule. It's a shooting script, which has more, this is an example I got from Lord of the Rings. It has like more of these camera directions, and it has a lot more stuff in all caps, even though you're supposed to only put them in caps when they're first introduced. But in a shooting script, you might put the character in caps every single time, just so the different departments can be like, oh, okay, so Sauron has to be in here, he has to be there, screaming villagers have to be there, so every department can look at it and more easily see
so the reason that we were getting confused, like we were reading these scripts and we were like, why does this script have like camera movements on it, or like a bunch of different exclamation, everything in all caps, a bunch, or stuff like that? It was because it was a shooting script and not a spec script. So it was
so they said most of the ones you find online, if you're reading a script online, it's probably going to be the shooting script, and that's why it has these things that people tell you not to do, like putting everything in caps and having these camera movements and stuff like that, like fade up, like that stuff wouldn't be in the original script. It would be after the fact for production. That's when they start writing that stuff in. Let's see. So shooting scripts, they usually include scene numbers, camera angles, technical notes. Sometimes they have like, we see the people go here, or we start here and go there. Like, even though in a regular script you wouldn't put we, in a shooting script you can put kind of whatever you want, just as long as it conveys the message to the rest of production and the rest of the crew, so that everybody understands and is on the same page of what they need to do.
Not whatever you want, but you get the gist.
Yeah, so it included scene numbers. What else did you just say?
Scene numbers, camera angles, technical notes. It can have stuff like, we see them come in, or we start outside and dolly in. And so then it gives like a more descriptive version of the script. It also has, sometimes it has like acting, certain notes for the actors. They need to say it like this, or they need to go here. Maybe they're doing a little bit of, because it's the cinematographer and it's the director working together on it. So they're thinking about all these different technical things while they're reading the script, as well as how to convey it in the story. So they might be thinking about blocking, they might be thinking about camera movement, and then they're adding all these elements into the script and capitalizing a lot of stuff that needs to stand out to other department heads. Like, this is going to be needing to stand out to the CGI department. Sauron has to be in the script. And then, the One Ring, that's important. We need to make sure we have the prop, fiery lava, more effects, stuff like that. So they kind of capitalize a lot of stuff that you wouldn't in a regular script, just to convey like, hey, casting director or whoever needs this, these are important elements that we're going to need. Still up to them to read through the script and find those elements, but just capitalizing them all makes it easier for everyone in the department, or all the department heads.
That makes sense.
Yes, Mel, the script that you guys would be writing in the storyboard exercise would be a spec script.
And is that typical that the people who get the storyboard would be getting a spec script and not a shooting script?
Probably not, because it depends on the order of things. People do things in different orders, but usually the storyboard's made by the director. So they're the ones who also work on the shooting sketch, the shooting script. So they'd probably work whatever their process is. I would probably do the shooting script first, kind of get a general idea, and then go back through and really like draw it out.
So the director usually does the shooting script and the storyboard?
No, screenplay writer. So there's, like I mentioned in the last meeting, there's a difference between a script writer and a screenplay writer. Screenplay writer usually does this. They convert your script and your writing into this shooting script. That is their main purpose, because translating a script into visuals on television is a process. So like you've probably heard they talk about like superhero movies and how everything you see in the comics doesn't look so good on film, specifically on like costumes and stuff like that. If you've ever noticed, like Superman's cape isn't the same color red as in the cartoon, just because not everything that you see in a cartoon or in a comic looks the same. So it's the same ideal with a shooting script. These guys are going to convert the script in a way that looks good on screen, because not everything that you write, like you'll read something and be like, well, it sounds good on paper, but like when we film it, it's not going to look so good on film. So these guys go in and they try to write it in a way that they think it's going to look best on screen. So that's what the difference between your screenplay and your spec script and so forth.
Yeah, like for the most part, story-wise, there aren't that many differences between a shooting script and a spec script. It's mainly just the technical stuff's added in for production.
That makes
sense. Of course, there
sense.
are revisions later, but usually when you're converting it from a spec script, the final draft, to a shooting script, it's just going to be mainly adding technical details and things like that to
like
help with
like,
production.
Yeah, like different types of shots, and yeah, like you said, some directions and
like the page numbers and scene numbers, and sometimes even
sense.
shot numbers, depending on how technical they want to get.
Okay, that makes sense.
So shooting scripts are the final versions of the script. That doesn't mean they're not going to be revised, but it means that for now it's the final version. Each page is given page numbers, and the scenes are given numbers, and the shots, if they want to, are given numbers as well. I already said that. So any revisions that get made after the fact, they can like revise certain pages only. So you don't want to, if you have a script that's 120 pages and you need to revise a scene on page 13, then you're not going to try to reprint the entire script for everybody and give it out. You're just going to revise that one page 13, and then it's called like a color revision. They do like a color scheme where they're going to print out the new page on a different color sheet of paper each time.
And what if the revision turned like into 2 pages? Then would it be like page 13.1 and 13.2 or something?
Yeah, similar to that. It's I think it's 13 and 13A. That way,
okay.
That way it doesn't break apart the rest of the scenes, because you always want those scenes to stay the same so that nobody gets confused later.
No, that makes sense, because you're not going to be like 13, 14 and then have 40, like you would, yeah.
Yeah, and then be like, oh, never mind, that's the new 14. That would be way too confusing. So they just, if it takes up a new page or it takes up a new part, they just add it in. They're adding a new scene in between. They'll say this is 14 or A14, so that it comes before scene 14. And then
I like that. It ends up being a lot more simple than you might think. Like it seems like it sounds complicated, but then when you break it down, it's like, I guess it becomes simplified because it's very, 13, you know what I mean? How they do it is very systematic. So then everybody always knows. And I like that.
So then all you would need is like, if you already have the script and you're one of the department heads or whoever needs the script, all you would need is the new page. You wouldn't need the entire script again. You would just be like, oh, let me go get page 4 or 4 and 5, 4 and 4A or whatever, however many pages it is, so that you have the new part and your script is up to date.
That makes sense.
Hey, I'm a little confused on something. I'm hoping Brian can clarify. So the shooting script is written by a different person than who writes the screenplay, like the initial screenplay?
It's not.
And
yeah.
If so, like, how do they credit that, and who gets paid for creating the actual
screenplay writer?
So the screenplay writer also writes the shooting script?
The shooting script, yes. So there's the script writer or the writer.
Uh-huh.
story by, written by. Story by is I have this idea, and then
Right.
you tell it to a bunch of writers. They come up with the script. They'll come together and they'll write the script, and then they'll send it off to a screenplay writer, which takes the
Ah,
same script, and then pretty much they just convert it into a shooting script. So
So I
okay.
guess there's
you've
both
seen it. Just go on any movie and watch the credits. I mean, every credits are going
Right.
to be different, but if you've ever noticed, like you'll see a segment of a whole bunch of executive producers, then producers, and then screenplay writers, script writers, all this other stuff. So it's a, I think Brenton was asking me this question too. Yeah, like they'll have a team of writers to write, and then they'll send it off to screenplay writers for revision for scripts and stuff like that.
So when they're at the Academy Awards and everything, the person that's getting the award is the actual writer, though, right? The person or the
Yeah.
writers who wrote the first
Yes.
script. Okay. So the screenplay or the script, I'm sorry, the person who writes the shooting script, they get paid kind of like a one-off type thing. Just that's kind of like their specialty.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I guess like because they'd have to really not just have to understand story, but you have to understand all the technical and how it gets translated to film. I guess that makes sense why it's its own job,
Yeah.
right? Like
You have to have an idea of what's going to look good on film. It's just because like not everything you shoot, you would think, okay, I'm a cinematographer, I should be able to make anything look good. That's not the case. Like you're going to find locations that just don't look good on film, no matter how good you light it or whatever. And it's the same thing with a script. Like you're just going to have certain scenes that just don't play out well on screen as they would like in a video game or in a cartoon or whatnot. So these people are pretty much paid to revise the script in a way that they think would best look good in a movie. And that's why there's so many differences in between like video game movies and cartoons that were turned into movies. If you ever wonder like, how come they just don't make it like the actual show or pretty much like take any anime that was converted into a movie, like those don't really turn out good. They haven't figured it out like how to make those work. But
yeah, those are always
yeah,
I don't know if I've seen
it's
one
just
live action
just
anyway.
because like they haven't figured it out like how we're going to convert like an anime, a Japanese style cartoon and make it look good and in a live action movie. They haven't figured that out yet, but that's why, just because like not everything is meant to be live action. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you mean?
Oh, like, because everything doesn't work for like if you think about a cartoon and like their outfits or just like some of the anime style things. If you ever watch an anime, they do a lot of like where they'll blur the entire background and just have the one character looking at the screen, or they'll look off in the distance and just have like an emotion going through their head. That doesn't really work as well with live action as it does in an anime because we're used to the anime style. But if you try it in live action, it just feels a little off. And then if you think about costumes, like some costumes might look good in an anime, in a cartoon, because it was like the way that they draw it, all the, what am I trying to say? The dimensions and everything are look fine. But if you get it in real life and you have these weird shoulder things sticking off the edges and this giant sword that's double the size of the character, like it's very weird looking and it looks a little clunky.
Yeah, because like 2D animation is meant to be like a simplified use of like visuals. Like they don't draw the details like seams on clothing and there's often like a lot of like solid colors in 2D animation, which if you were to see like live action characters wearing these like solid colors things, it would look kind of weird, like kind of like a Wes Anderson film. And I think like if you're gonna try and make it look like similar, then you have to like acknowledge that it doesn't look realistic, like say Scott Pilgrim. They were acknowledging that that was not like very realistic looking. It was this kind of like magical realism vibe to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they have to like find a way to make it work. And if they take it too seriously and it looks ridiculous, it kind of comes off as comedic, even though they're not trying to go for that. So
Yeah.
that's where they have to try to figure it out. But yeah, for the shooting script, it's just for production. It's just to get everybody on the same page and make sure that these scenes are locked in, these pages are locked in, and that any changes that happen in the future don't affect the entire script as a whole, hopefully. And there are rare occasions where they have revised the entire script. But usually it's just a page or a few pages or a scene or two instead of like the entire thing.
So Mel, did you get your question? Mel asked a question here. I don't know. Sorry, I was taking care of something. She said,
yeah, he answered it.
Oh, he did? Okay, just making sure. Because while he's answering you guys, I'm in charge of looking at the chat, but I was taking care of something.
So revisions in a shooting script follow a certain order where they're going to print out these revisions on the new colored pages, and they're going to put them into the script so everyone knows that these are changes that were made. They also put on the front page, they write down these colors and when they happen. So like the first revision, well, this isn't a revision. The first, when you have your shooting script, it's considered a production white, which means it's unaltered, it's not revised at all. Then you have your first revisions. If you go in, you change a few scenes, you change, page 3, 8, 12, 19. Then you're going to go in and you're going to reprint those new pages, those new revisions on these blue sheets, these blue printer paper for the pages 3, 9, whatever I said, 13. And then you put them in the script, and on the front page, you're going to put blue revision, the date that you did it. If you did it today, you'd say June 14th, 2021. And then you write down what pages were altered. And then the next time, somebody's going to change more stuff. The director thinks that this scene doesn't work anymore, so we're going to take it out. Well, that's going to be a pink revision because it's, that way you know which ones are which, and like you're always up to date on the newest revisions that are happening within the script. And you're keeping track of all the revisions that have been made from start to finish. And it goes through like the WGA, some like productions, it depends on what you're on. They'll probably have their own color scheme. But WGA, the Writers Guild of America, use production white, blue revision, then pink, yellow, green, goldenrod, buff, salmon, cherry, and then it resets and kind of does like a second blue, second pink, second yellow, and all the way down. And if it restarted again, it would start third blue, and it would just keep going in that order, depending on how many revisions you have, which hopefully you wouldn't have that many because that would be a lot of production costs. But it's just a way to keep everybody on the same page. So some of the things they were saying is, where was I at? Let's see. If there's a page that's removed, they don't take out that page number, they leave it in. Like if you're going to delete a scene, you think it doesn't work anymore, it doesn't make sense to the story now that it's revised, so you're taking out page 3. You're going to leave page 3 in there, but you're going to put it on a paper that says omitted. That way, whoever gets the script, they're not thinking, hey, where's page 3? I'm missing page 3. Instead, they're like, oh, okay, it's omitted, so I know there's nothing. I still have page 3, but I know there's nothing there, so I can skip to page 4. It's just a communication thing, keeping everybody up to date, making sure they're not feeling like they're missing anything. They have all the information they need, and they're up to date. They said if the majority of the script has revisions, they may just decide to make the whole script printed in the new color. So if you have all but like 5 pages and you're on a 120-page script, you might just reprint the whole thing in blue and say, you know what, the whole script is revised, even though, those 5 pages, maybe not. There's a new scene added between 2 scenes. It'll be called, for example, like if it's between scene 10 and 11, you would add a scene called A11. So A11 comes first, then 11. So it goes 10, A11, 11. There's a new page added or something goes on to another page, the numbers will become something like, if you're on page 10 and you're adding more dialogue. Maybe you feel like you need to have more dialogue or there needs to be more action, and it goes on to another page. Since you already have a page 11, you don't want to push everything back. So what they do is they put in a 10A. So it goes from 10 to 10A to 11, or from 10 to 10A to 10B, depending on how much you're adding in.
That makes sense.
They every time they have a change, they usually put like an asterisk next to whatever's been revised. If it was a piece of dialogue, if it was some action, if it's the whole page, they'll put it up near the top of the page, near the page number. If it's just a certain part of the page, they'll put an asterisk where it is. That way, everybody who gets it, they just see exactly where that change is made. It helps definitely for the actors to know if there's any new lines they need to know. You know, any camera movements that were updated, they need to have the cinematographer and director know. Everybody needs to be on the same page of what's been revised. So you put a little asterisk next to everything that's changed.
That makes sense.
Any detailed special effects or detailed stunt work might be added to a shooting script, or specific info for the sets, costumes, or lighting, and any special notations regarding acting, as well as all the other stuff I mentioned earlier. And usually shooting scripts are a lot longer than spec scripts because each new scene will be put on a new page. So you might have a scene that runs for 3 pages, or no, 2.5 pages. Well, you're not going to put the next scene underneath it like you would in a spec script. You're going to actually do a page break and put it on page 3 or page 4. I guess it would be page 4 because it's 2.5. Yeah. So scene 1 would be page 1, 2, and half of page 3. Scene 2 starts on page 4. That way to keep all these different scenes. What's this link? The real primary difference between script writing and screenwriting is what the writer's function is. A script is normally what the actors are broadcasting or broadcasters are saying. It is totally concerned with dialogue. Also, it has little to do with stage direction or setting the scene in some description. The real focus here is relaying a story and the words behind that. Sound effects or lighting instructions have little to do with script writing. Anything that is not directly concerned with the actors is omitted. However, the screenwriter has to inform everything else that is going on that was omitted from the script. Probably the director will find this most useful than one of the actors, although a screenplay would be extremely useful also. A screenplay written by a screenwriter relays all the various parts of the filming that are outside of the actor's remit. For example, those could also include things like camera angles and special effects. Oh, thanks, Brian. So that's the main difference between the screenwriter and the screenwriting and the screenplay.
That makes sense.
Sorry, I meant script writing and screenwriting. Anyway, does anybody have any comments or questions about shooting scripts? You're muted. Priscilla's trying to talk.
I was just letting Brent know I was accidentally texting Brian this whole time. So sorry about that, Brent. I was not ignoring you. He asked me something and I was gonna respond and then I accidentally texted Brian like a bunch. Sorry, Brian.
But yeah, so Brian, I actually have a question. Does the director work together with the screenplay writer, or do they work separately and bring it to the director after the fact, and then the director kind of changes it a little bit, or how does that work? Do you know? Or does it just depend? Brian? Well, I'll ask later. Anyway, that was
also,
my question.
and what I've been reading though, I'm a little confused because I was under the impression that the director and the cinematographer are in charge of the shooting script because they're figuring out, when to shoot everything for production reasons and everything, all their considerations they have.
Yeah, that's what I
And
was thinking.
if that's how it is, does that mean they then go and communicate to another person all that information, and that person writes the shooting script, like puts pen to paper and does it? I'm just a little confused on the whole thing.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to ask. I think if once Brian gets back, I'll ask him again. But yeah, my question is exactly that. It says, does the director and the cinematographer work with them? Do they bring a preliminary one that they already wrote to them and then they adapt it? Oh, Brian, you're back. All right. So Brian, does the director and cinematographer go to the screenplay writer and convey what they want to be put into the screenplay, or does the screenplay writer write the stuff in that they think it needs and then bring it to the director and cinematographer to make changes or to give notes? How does it work?
I mean, it could be either way because it's like a back and forth. Usually, the whole screenplay process is in the pre-production process. So like, I really don't. I mean, there's been like, normally it's just like, well, yeah, I guess you can say the screenplay writer would be on set as a what's the word, advisor, but for the most part, I would assume it would be they convert the script into a screenplay and then they hand it off to the director. It can go both ways.
Okay, so it just depends on the process and how much control the director wants.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Because ultimately it's not the screenplay writer, it's not their ultimate decision. So like, you can write something and then director is going to go and change it. So
right.
Yeah, so it's all
Unless,
at the end of the day, the director's word is the last word. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, guys. The next thing we're gonna talk
Got a
about.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good night, everyone. So what Brian was saying that the director has the last say in changing it, but as far as like the executive producer, what if do they have a hand in that as well? Because if
yes, they do.
okay, because I want to know like if you're the director and you're like, oh, I'm gonna do it this way, and I'm like, I don't want my story conveyed like that, because I'm the executive producer.
That's what's wrong with Hollywood today, is that it's being led by executive producers, and you'll hear this complaint a lot. Like, directors lose their creative edge because of executive producers. So like, if you're ever wondering, oh man, this movie sucks, chances are it is the executive producer. I've experienced this as well. On a shoot I did for a short film, had Trey Chaney in it. If you don't know who he is, he's one of the actors from The Wire, the show from back in the day. So it had him in it, and like, they were pretty much, he was getting paid the most money, of course, because he's the star. He wasn't even the lead. He was just, but I guess because his celebrity status.
Right.
But I was shooting it, and then like, for me, like, I like to shoot to edit, because I started off editing, so I shoot to edit, which is, they go hand in hand. So like, when I'm done shooting, I go back and I edit some stuff. Like, I'll edit the scene. Like, if it's a short scene, I'll just edit it together, or put together a little rough and show it to everybody. And the executive producers, they liked it. They're like, yeah, all right, cool. Like, do you think you can put together a little trailer and all this stuff? So I did. And they were like, they loved the trailer, but they just thought it was like, there's just too much guns in the trailer. You got to take out some of these guns. And I'm like, well, that's the movie. Like, it's throughout the whole movie. But it's like, I can't argue with them because it's their movie. And it's like, I had to go back and do whatever. And then I ended up, they picked me to edit too towards the end of it. And like, we were just butting heads because like, they were like, oh, can we have this song? Because they were producing it, they also did music. So like, they were getting like their artists to do the soundtrack to the movie, and they were trying to get me to ingest it into the to the movie, and I was just
Right.
like, this song doesn't go good with this scene. But it's kind of hard to argue with that, and they don't know, they don't understand. They just know that, oh, I like this song, put it in the movie, but that doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that it's best for the movie, if you know what
So
I'm
is
saying.
it kind of intimidating at times that because the executive producer and them coming in and saying this is what they want and taking away your creativity or how you want to try to you know make the movie and the way you think it should be done on camera? Because like you were saying, guys were saying before, with I could be telling a story, but I don't mean it's gonna sound or the way I'm telling it is gonna look good on camera, you know. And this is where you could bump heads. Was like, well, you want all these things in there, but it's not gonna relay its message on camera that way.
Yeah, it's not only is it it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating because, especially with that movie, because I was hired to be the cinematographer. I wasn't hired as an editor. So the thing about editing and why I hate, I love to edit, but I just hate, and I brought this up too, like with cameras and stuff like that, and everything is in industry and name brand specific. It's the same thing with editing as well. It's like they want you to edit on Premiere Pro. Now they're shifting over to DaVinci Resolve. You got to edit on DaVinci. And the reason why they want you to use these editors, like I edit on Sony Vegas. So like I'm like the awkward kid in the group, I edit on a completely different editor. But I do that because that was just the editing software I started with. It was the most easiest to learn, and I still use it to this day.
I
I
think
know
I
how to use
lost you, Brian.
I know how to use the other editing softwares, but let me get to
Got
the
some
point.
connecting issues. I hope it's not me.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
But anyway, I shoot the, like I said, I mentioned I shoot to edit, but when you shoot as a cinematographer and like you give your footage off to somebody who's not on the same level as you as far as editing goes, that's your reputation, and that's your what people are going to know you for. So like if I shoot a movie and I give it to somebody who doesn't know how to edit right, and they edit it terribly, you know what I mean? Like no matter how good your cinematography is, they're just going to know it for the crappy editing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like their sloppy work makes you look sloppy, and therefore you develop a reputation off of that. So like when they're giving me like, oh man, you got to have the song in there, and I'm like, well dude, you're gonna, this isn't gonna look good. It kind of like makes me want to be like, well, don't put my name on the movie at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I have the footage and all, but at the same
I
time,
can't
like
even hear nobody.
I don't have the rights to it.
You can't hear. We can hear you. This is weird.
Yeah.
Sure you didn't mute?
Yeah, you can mute everybody.
You want to leave and come back in? I mean, we can all hear it, so I don't know what's going on, bro. Well,
I think you can stop me. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's not something, these things.
I have a question about all this. Like I've always kind of not really understood the dynamic.
You guys can hear me?
Executive producer and producer. Like I know executive producers, they're the ones with the money and have like the most say for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But does the producer ever like step in and are they a go-between for the whole creative process?
All right, let me
kind of rein some of this
log
executive producer stuff in?
Leave the chat
or how's that work?
in, all right,
No, a producer is just a producer is somebody that's hired to produce whatever. Like their job is specifically to produce cameras. Their job is to produce set, sound, all that stuff. That's their primary function as producers. So like the executive producer will say, the executive producer will hand over the money and be like, all right, this is the budget. It's up to you to go about executing the actual work, calling the places, calling the locations. Like if you have a scene that's for a church, like a producer would be the one to produce the church. You know what I mean?
I got it. They wrangle everything and make sure all the materials everything is there to be utilized.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're kind of like a supervisor in the way they just kind of set everything up and then make sure it's running the way it's intended to.
Yeah.
James shared this with me, so I'm going to go ahead. So somebody asked this earlier: story by, screenplay by, written by. So, story by. A common misconception of story by is that it refers to the person who came up with the idea. Not quite. What it actually means is that anyone who worked on a treatment or any other story outline is entitled to credit for the story. You may also get this credit if you're hired to do a page 1 rewrite. That gets you sole screenplay by credit, despite the initial writer having written a complete script. The first writer on an original screenplay is entitled to a shared story by credit. That bylaw is called the irreducible story minimum. Then you got screen story by. If a writer gave some ideas and allowed other people to use those ideas as a jumping off point for the actual screenplay, then they are entitled to screen story by credit. But that only comes via arbitration, which we will cover later. If that writer and their springboard idea were from a publication, they may receive credit as follows: based on a X property by blah, blah, blah. So like based on the books by this person or something like that. Based on an article, based on a book. Screenplay by. This credit goes to writers who physically wrote drafts or scenes that are included in the final version of the movie. Screenplay by can only be shared by 3 people or 3 teams of people. That idea of teams of people is where you might run into some of those jam-packed writing credits sections. And written by, this is used when writers are entitled to both screenplay by and story by credit. This does not apply to adaptations or any screenplay with source material, but that does not count newspapers, articles, or biographies. As a rule, written by will not be shared by more than 2 writers. Basically, written by is the person who wrote it in the beginning, and then these other ones are just kind of like people who added something to it. Screenplay by is a shooting script, sounds like.
Okay, that makes sense. So like the original writers get extra, like more credit, and then everybody who like worked on revisions or.
Yeah, so the original one would be if it's an original work of theirs, it's written by. And if it's taken from someone else, they probably have like story by or screen story by. Screen story by would be like if you're taking it from a book. And
that makes sense.
The people who wrote the Lord of the Rings movies, they took it from that book, so they're not the writers; they're the screen story writers.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just something James sent over to kind of clear that up. Okay. Brent, you can hear everyone?
Yeah, I can hear you guys now. I don't know what happened. Lakota's sabotaging me, man.
Who's sabotaging you?
Lakota.
What?
Yeah, he don't like me. I've been texting him in a group chat. He hasn't been responding to me. It's okay.
Yeah, I have. Haven't I? I don't
know.
Sorry if I haven't. Because I heard like Priscilla said she was responding to you, so I think I was like, oh, okay, for the private.
Nah, I'm joking. But yeah, I can hear you guys now.
Okay, cool. All right, so the next thing we're gonna jump into is insurance. Different insurance and what they mean for a production. Brian, what kind of insurance do you usually get? Do you get it, or do you just kind of do it guerrilla style, or how do you do it?
Guerrilla style.
What?
But you can get insurance for all your gear as far as that goes. But I think you can call an insurance company and tell them, hey, you're shooting a movie. Depending on what scene, like we did shoot this. I remember when I was in film school, it wasn't my group, but I was just there helping out. And one of the actresses, they used her car, and then somebody in the car broke something in the car, and the actress was kind of upset. And it was just a thing like, well, I mean, she had car insurance, but like it wasn't covered in there. And that was like a little life lesson to get insurance the next time. I don't necessarily know all the terminology and what it's about, but you can get I guess film insurance. I would suppose. I don't necessarily know what it's called.
Production insurance.
Production insurance, so that something does break, they can cover it, but I'm not necessarily sure how much that costs.
Yeah, I was seeing a few different things. Obviously, it's just like car insurance, guys. The different types you have, the more money it's going to cost. Like you might have car insurance for just liability, and that means, if a deer hits into your car, too bad you didn't have that kind of insurance. You just have it for if you hit into somebody, and then if somebody hits into you, it's a different type. So there's all these different kinds. And in productions, these are like the 8 main types. So I'm gonna just kind of go over them in this kind of like a insurance cheat sheet I found. So Brian was talking about the equipment. Equipment coverage is one of the policies that you can get from production insurance. Equipment insurance policies can cover both rented and owned equipment. If you're going to rent it, you're most likely definitely going to need this. Most rental houses and stuff aren't going to let you just use equipment without having insurance, just in case you break their stuff or something happens on set.
Do you think they offer insurance through their rentals, kind of like rental car places?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Yep. But that, obviously you want to shop around if you have time to try to see if you can get a better deal and still have, the insurance from somebody, because you might be able to get a package deal that's better or the same price as a deal from a rental company, or the rental company might have the best deal around. You won't know until you kind of call around and see. But equipment coverage covers for damage, theft, or loss. And they say the typical deductible for equipment starts around $2,500. So sometimes it depends on what kind of equipment you're even going to get. If you're going to get equipment that's cheaper than $2,500, you might not even care to get it covered, because if that's the deductible, then there's no point.
That why some people don't like to lend out the equipment at all, because they don't want to, probably don't have insurance on it as well?
Yeah. Well, you would have to get the insurance coverage to get the equipment from somebody, not them. So like if you're going to borrow a camera from me, or you're going to like pay me, I don't know, however much to borrow a camera or something, I'm going to require you to have what's called a COI, a certificate of insurance. So you bring that certificate to me saying, yeah, I have equipment and coverage. And I go, okay, here's my camera. And you can use it.
Gotcha.
So that's the way that works. But yeah, so it depends, different deductibles, different rates and stuff like that, just like any kind of insurance. So if you get a $200 to $500 deductible, the price of the premium of the insurance is going to go up. But then if the camera is $20,000 and it breaks, you only have to pay $500, and then the insurance covers the rest. Or if the deductible is $2,500, you'll pay that, and then after that, insurance will step in. So that's something to think about when you guys are shopping around for any of this kind of insurance. There's another thing, Brian was talking about it again, general liability. That would be that person's car or somebody gets hurt. Any kind of general liability covers bodily injury and property damage incurred by third parties on premises and locations during the course of filming. General liability only applies to locations within the US and Canada. So
James, question, you guys have to
how much does that run?
Right.
I'm not sure. I don't know the prices of these. I know there was like a general, I have a note somewhere where they were given all sorts of different numbers. So I think it depends a lot on your budget, which broker you're using. Oh, Brent, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because I remember James was shooting on some people's property. Like, say, for instance, you shooting on someone's property. Do you require to get general liability if you're using, going to use somebody's yard or something, or acres on their property to shoot, and someone gets injured? You don't want to be on somebody's property and get injured. That owner could be liable, right?
Usually with that, you would sign a location release, which is an agreement between the location owner and the production or the producer, saying that if there are things like that, usually what the location owner will require is that you say, if somebody gets hurt on this property, it's not your fault as the owner, it's our fault as the production. That way the
Right.
location goes, okay, yeah, you can take my thing, you know, for
Right.
400 or whatever they want.
And then the production gets the actors and crew to sign waivers, so then it's not their fault either, right?
Right. So
Right.
that they can't be sued, but they also get different kinds of insurance to cover it just in case they get hurt. So then, like, it depends again, budget and the
Or they should be doing that.
Yeah.
So when you budgeting, you really gotta have a budget for
Yeah.
insurance, a whole bunch of goddamn insurance as well too.
Oh yeah, I think they said what, 10% of your budget?
Yeah,
Could be
one of
insurance.
the like lower end budget people said 10% of your budget if it's pretty, you know, low budget, or, you know, depending on how low you get, it's obviously going to be a bigger chunk of your percentage, but a general rule is like 10% for something that's micro budget, which is, I think is micro budget is pretty large for the price, but I consider micro budget like 50,000 and under, but I've seen 250,000 be considered micro budget. So it just depends.
Yeah, I'm in that
10% of that,
budget.
depending on the equipment you have and stuff. Or they say like around 2 to 5% for like a really large budget, like something in the, you know, 100, 200 million area. So
Right, a $50,000 budget, even 250,000. I mean, that's still not too bad if you're talking about, you know, 10% for the insurance wise. The amount of insurance you got to get, you know, for liability, for equipment, for workers' comp in case one of your actors get hurt. Like, there's a lot.
yeah. There's a lot of things you need, and a lot of states require different things. Legally speaking, I think a lot of states are starting to require workers' comp. I'm not sure if that applies to lower budgets with like a limited amount of people, but I think once you get a certain amount of people and or a certain amount of budget, or it might be for everyone, I'm not sure. This is why you'd have to look it up, but and especially depending on what state you're in. But workers' comp it covers medical expenses, lost wages, rehabilitation costs for cast and crew that are injured on set. Workers' comp is typically handled by payroll companies like Rapbook, so you might just hire someone out to do that for you. But yeah, it's workers' comp to pay people who get hurt on your set, like you were
Or
saying.
just hire Priscilla to do that.
To do what? For me to do what?
Nothing. Have a beautiful day.
All right. So yeah, that's if anybody gets set that's working for you, they get hurt. Now, general liability covers the people, like if there's a kid that's crossing the road and you accidentally hit them with the car or one of the moving trucks that has one of the grip trucks.
Damn,
that kid would be like covered by general liability. Well, I mean, I'm not saying they die. I'm just saying
okay.
they get hurt. They have to go to the hospital, or maybe they just got a bruise, but the parents still bring them to the hospital. General liability covers that. Workers' comp doesn't cover anyone outside of your you employ. And the employees would be any crew or cast or extras or, you know, any of that type of people. So the next thing is short-term production insurance. Short-term production insurance covers a single production and it's purchased on a project by project basis. It's perfect for producers who only want to shoot like 1 or 2 projects a year. The length of your project might be a day. You can get it as short as a day. So you can get production just for a day, and that'll obviously make your coverage cost a lot less, especially if it's a lower budget. The equipment's not as much, things like that. So short-term production insurance was probably what most of us will use. But if you ever get to the point where you can make a bunch of productions a year, you might want to consider getting an annual production insurance, which is unlike short-term production insurance. Annual policies cover all of your productions within a year.
And what about the E&O?
What?
What about the E&O, error and omissions?
Error and omissions, that is used for if you are going to sell your project, if there's a distributor that wants to buy it from you, they require you to get E&O insurance, which is if you didn't cover your bases, if you didn't get those people to sign those waivers of liability and the release forms that they can use their pictures, if you left anything out, that insurance is going to cover the distributor buying it from you. So anything like if you accidentally have a Coke can symbol in your movie and Coke doesn't want to be featured in your movie and they start wanting to sue, errors and omission steps in for the distributor because you had to pay for that, so that to make sure that you forgot to take the can of soda out, and so they don't have to pay for it. Your insurance will.
That makes sense.
Like defamation of a character, unauthorized use.
Expensive.
What was that?
I said that might be needed because we might be shooting with Coca-Cola cans and Pepsi in the background.
Yeah, well, usually if a distributor is buying your film, they're gonna like do a check. They're gonna check for all those types of things to see how risky it might be, and then how much they offer you will probably depend on how much they feel like they might get sued or get into some kind of trouble, based on if you're saying something about, if you're saying something bad about a president, that could be considered defamation of a character, and then that's where the errors and omissions steps in. But errors and omissions only cover so much. So maybe that person got to sue for 5 million and you only covered up to 2 million, and then, oh no, they're on the hook for 3 million. So they're going to do a kind of like a check on your whole movie to make sure they feel it's not too risky and they're willing to take it on.
Makes sense. And yeah, I guess that would be like, be very careful, I guess, like not to make an error and omission while you're filming something.
Right.
Yeah, that's why it's important for all these different documents and everything to make sure you have contracts with everyone. Whatever you shot at, the locations, you want to make sure you have release. We'll talk about that in a second, as well as the cast and crew stuff. But you want to make sure you get all that, because if you don't, it's not just about selling it and not having those things. It's about they can come back and get you before you even are able to sell it. So you want to make sure to cover yourself from every angle.
That makes sense. Yeah, do it like know the right way and take the, dot your I's, cross your T's.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you have a super high budget film anyway, it would be stupid not to. I mean, the only time you really wouldn't worry about, too much insurance is if it's like you and 2 other people and you got a couple people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if it's very small, like through you and 2 friends and you can have a release form. Otherwise, like you'd want, and it's your own equipment, then you'll be like not really worried too much about.
Yeah, if it's just you and it's your own equipment, you don't have to worry. But if it's anyone else, even if it is your brother or sister, they might later on, maybe you shot the whole thing and they decide, you know what, I don't like the way this turned out. I don't want to be in it. You can't use it anymore because you didn't get them to sign a release form to use their
what I'm saying is still get your release forms 100%, but you don't have to necessarily worry much about insurance. But yeah, definitely on the release form stuff. I think that's the best way to do it. That's what they do in all like any kind of like short film and stuff. They kept release forms for everything.
I feel like even if it were my equipment, I'd want insurance. What if something goes wrong?
It depends on the price of the stuff, but it also it depends on where you're using.
Yeah, it also
locations might require certain insurance. Workers' comp might be legally obligated in certain areas, depending on how many people you have in your production, how big it is, or how much money you're spending on it.
So V said they have sites that offer props, labels that are copyright free. I think this covers more errors and omissions, like if something was accidentally shown in that, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of shows where they have like substitutions, but what do you mean? Do you mean like they would give you?
No, they give you like a can of soda that's just red, so it looks like a can of Coke, but it's not.
Like Slate Media.
Gotcha. Okay, now I get what you mean. Yeah, I mean the old Nickelodeon shows used to have like
they have that, but there's still no matter what, even if your movie itself doesn't have anything in it, there's always, if you're going to sell it to a distributor, they're most likely always going to require you to do errors and omission, just because you might have I might forget to get a release form from Priscilla. And Priscilla decides, 5 years from now, she doesn't want to be in this thing. She's in the behind the scenes and she doesn't like it. She doesn't want to be seen anymore. So she decides, no, you can't show me. And I didn't get that release. So now, you know, whoever distributed it is going to have to pay Priscilla suing them, you know, because she doesn't want to be seen in the behind the scenes anymore. So now they have to decide whether to take it out or what to do. So
We could just get rid of
that's
her.
the reason you always want to, no matter who it is, you always want to be sure to get
Yeah,
all
that
the
makes sense.
information. Because they're also going to have you sign one if you're in it when you're selling it to the distributor. If you're in the film or in the behind the scenes yourself, they're going to have you sign one for them. But moving on from that, certificate of insurance, I talked about this, the COI, it's used as a document from your insurance broker. It displays your insurance information. It's like if you have Geico or something, or Progressive, like a car insurance card, it's kind of like that. On a film set, you always need to have some of those ready just in case anything happens and someone needs to see it. If you're in a location, they need to make sure that you have that. You always want to have extra copies once you actually get the insurance. Keep certificates of insurance on your person and hand them out to whoever needs them so that everyone can show anybody who shows up. If cops show up and go, "Hey, are you allowed to shoot here?" "Yeah, here's the location release form and here's the certificate of insurance." "Okay, good, bye." That kind of thing. And lastly, there's specialty add-ons, which depends on the production. You might need special add-ons to your annual or short-term insurance, which is any kind of fire like pyrotechnics. If you have animals on set, if you're using drones, if there's any stunts, specialty vehicles, weapons, underwater shoots, watercrafts, anything like that, you'll need like a specialty add-on, which will make the cost of the insurance go up. And then bigger productions that use, like they have, what is it called? It's like a special workers' comp for the big actors. Like if you have Tom Cruise on your film, you would get a special insurance just on him in case, because if he dies or if he gets hurt and you can't continue the production, that whole movie's probably lost, which means that's going to be a big expense. But you know, those big, huge companies can afford it, and they always do that to make sure, just in case anything happens, they get covered for this really expensive thing in case the main actor, the one that's bringing it all together, the main name, like Tom Cruise or something, is just in case anything happens to him, they still can make their money back.
That makes sense.
So here I have, like someone said, basic insurance short-term or annual is going to cost a few $1,000s at minimum, but that was, someone else said, another website said it's probably going to cost, it starts around $400 to $2,500 to start, depending on if it's annual or by project. So I think it really depends on the area, how big your set is, what you have going on. Production by production is going to be very different, and company to company. So some companies might give you a better deal if you have a stunt, and some companies might give you a better deal if you just want workers' comp and general liability. It's just good to always, before you start production and pre-production, be aware of what your script needs, what all these things, that's why the script breakdowns and all this are so important. And you don't want to wait till last minute to get this insurance, because you want to put it into your budget. You want to know how much it's going to cost so you can budget it into your entire production budget.
That makes sense.
Anyone have any questions or comments about any of that?
No, I guess, yeah, I guess that's all part of like the breakdown, like when you're budgeting your film and like getting and funding the money and stuff, is taking into consideration what types of insurances you're going to be paying for.
Yeah. Because like once you start using it and you know your area, and you'll probably start understanding how much it's going to cost, and then you'll know.
I got a question.
Yeah, what's up, Brent?
All right. So is the certificate of insurance the same thing as having like a permit to film, like on site? Is the same type of thing?
No, the certificate of insurance is just for the insurance itself. A film permit is for like the city allows you to film there if it's a public space. If it's a private space, you might be able to get away with it you should be able to get away with it without a permit, but it depends on the city and the state, because some states are very
they want money.
Yeah, so they'll still make you get a permit even if you're shooting on private property. So it depends where you're at, but generally you only need a permit if you're shooting in a public place. The certificate of insurance shows that you have insurance covering, and then the location release form or the location agreement would be the form you use to actually get whoever owns that property's permission, or the city. If it's owned by the city, you would work with them to get that location release as well as the permit. So
right.
Is
These
the
things are
line
very
producer
important.
is the line producer the person who takes care of all this?
they take care of more like I believe they take care of more on set stuff. You know what? Actually, I have it right here.
Would it be the part of the executive team, the production?
Pretty sure the line producer just works with, they just work mainly with like the below the line. You would probably have like co-producer,
Maybe
or
the
producer
production
working on this
company.
kind of stuff. The location itself could be worked with a separate person entirely. It would be like a location manager. But the preliminary stuff, like insurance and all this, would probably be handled by either a production company, an executive producer, or a producer. It's
Yeah.
called the producer because they're just like the main producer.
Right.
Even
They
though
got the
executives
budget.
usually above them.
That makes sense.
It depends on the set as well. Like you could have somebody that some sets could say, you know what, the co-producer's in charge of this, or maybe the line producer.
Right.
You know, the line producer is usually just helping out in pre-production, and then mainly their job is on set.
Damn, so all these things we gotta look at. So Priscilla, you got a lot of work to do when we're getting ready to shoot at the end of the summer.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into this stuff. This is actually something I made.
I'm
I'll
gonna
show you
get
guys
stuck
later.
with the paperwork. I know.
Like
Of
the
course, you gotta
locations
drink your
department can
tea
have
and
a
everything.
locations manager.
But it's
depending on
okay.
how
I
big
told
your
them
set
it's
is.
actually kind of fun to like plan it out.
Location scout and a location manager, and the location manager would be the one who actually handles all the paperwork and stuff behind the scenes. While the location scout, if you have one, if they're not the same person, depending on your budget, how big the production is, you might have a location scout that actually goes out and looks at the locations and sees that they're good, while the location manager is the one who's signing the agreements and getting all the paperwork and all that. The insurance and stuff like that would most likely be covered by the producers themselves, or one of the producers, to make sure everyone's covered. But I'm gonna show you guys all this stuff I made later, but yeah.
That you made?
Yeah, I made those forms right there.
Oh, did? Oh, cool. That's great, man.
Thanks.
Send me some of those so I don't have to do it myself.
Yeah, exactly. It was mainly for me to keep everything in that, like, you know, for me to be able to remember everything easily.
Yeah, I would like a copy of that if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna send it out to everybody. I was just gonna show at the end.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But yeah, so one of the videos was saying that to shoot, I think it was Chicago. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but they were saying like to shoot in a public space in that city, whatever city they were in just an alleyway. They were going to use the alleyway for a day. They said it was going to cost, they wanted like certain fees and wanted certain hourly pay and all this stuff. It was going to cost like $1,200 an hour just for them to shoot in that alley. And they were like, we don't have the budget for that, so we're not even. So they went to a privately owned place, and that way the city was like, oh, okay, never mind, go ahead and use that. They weren't even gonna, they didn't require a permit or anything. So it always depends on where you're at.
Brent,
what was that?
So cool fun fact is, like, in New York, a lot of the film schools supply you a minor film permit to shoot around the city. So like if you go to New York Film Academy, they give you I've never been to New York Film Academy, but when I was looking to go to film school, that was one of the ones. And when I took the tour, they give you like a permit. And then like if you ever get approached by, depending on where you are, if you ever get approached by police or anything like that, you can show them your school ID and that will classify as a permit. But it depends on the school. Like my the film school I went to, they didn't do that for me. So like I was kind of screwed out of it. But New York is like really all about film and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. So like that, just like that, it depends on where you're at. Because it depends on the school, the area. you know, so it
Well,
depends.
we're gonna have
Because that school probably has an agreement with the city to make
Yeah.
sure that, you know,
The
student
New York
IDs
Film
work.
Academy, they linked up with the mayor and they arranged it so that all their students could get free
That's
film permits and whatnot.
right.
to shoot.
That's
So
what
what
I
we
was
got to
just
do, guys, is find a film student that's in the New York Film Academy to sign
Yeah.
off as
no,
an
not only
executive
that.
producer.
It's like when election time coming up, you know, some of these councilmen and these senators, you just go up to them and, you know, send an email and say, hey, listen, you know, I'm trying to do a production and I'll definitely
Good luck with that.
good luck with that. We're gonna have you write it. Yo, you cannot sleep on
But
somebody.
But there's also those websites. Brian found it like a few weeks ago and he was telling us there's websites where you can rent out a space, which will have probably somewhere in the website all the forms you need and everything to sign off on the locations.
Exactly.
So if they're listing it on that website and it's for filmmakers to film in, then obviously they're
Covered.
Yeah.
Listen, I always believe it's in a way. I don't like to hear that you can't or it's too much. It's always gonna be a way. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes we have somebody on this team that has a gift of gab, so we're gonna get shit done.
Some people do. Like I was doing this one short and the executive producers were like, man, anything you want. And I was like, anything? And they're like, yeah, anything you want. And I was like, so how are we gonna shoot? It was a jail scene. And I was like, yo, how are we gonna shoot this jail scene? And they're like, well, we can just shoot in the jail. And I was like, what? They were like, yeah, we can get you access to the jail. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. And they sure enough, like they got us in like the first level. And I was like, yo, it was crazy. Yeah, it was pretty crazy because like we were on the first floor, which was like minimum securities. Like those dudes were pretty chill, but like they knew we were coming and they tried to like, you know, tuck everybody away in their cells and stuff, but they still saw us and we still stuck out like a sore thumb and whatnot. And it was just kind of like, ugh. But you know, they let us walk around and we got to pick out where we wanted to shoot at, and then we shot, but we were in there for like a good 4 hours and then we were out of there but like some like Brent was saying, some people have the gift of gab. Like I would never be able to talk somebody into
Sarah, I think with the whole like
no, but that's what's cool. Like that's why
probably you
people
haven't finished
even
paying
like,
it
you
or
never
something
know
like
who
that.
knows people or who can get you access to certain things like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go up to
Somebody
someone
might
and
be
just
up
be
for
like, you have
election.
access to the jail, right?
Yeah.
So it is cool to like just to have like outreach of people to be able to know that kind of thing.
Yeah,
speaking on that note, so like getting film permits is very, especially in DC, it's just ridiculous. Like it's a week. First of all, it's like up to 3 when you apply to it to get the permit. It's like up to 3 weeks to get it processed and whatnot. And depending on where you're shooting at, depends on whether or not you get it or how much you're gonna pay. So like the larger you, if you're putting like independent and a crew up to 10, like you're gonna pay the minimum. But like any more than 10 people, the price goes up. And depending on where you shoot. So like if you're shooting on a very busy road, now you have to pay to have officers block the road off so you can shoot. And then so it's like it keeps adding up to more and more stuff you gotta
that actually that reminds me, in that video we were watching, they said that they would need a cop on site, which is why the price probably shot up so much.
So
while they're
just
filming, they needed a cop to stand by and do what you like, exactly what you're saying.
Hence why we have some friends who have family members who are cops and like, hey, you know, do you mind just swinging by for an hour or two, you know, tell the your dispatcher you're gonna attend to a scene real quick. You have a, you know, a fender bender and you sit there. You know what I mean?
That's kind of sketchy, so I don't know.
Yeah.
That is not sketchy.
He could get fired for that if he's like doing something.
Yeah. Listen, I've seen cops in Brooklyn and New York come and sit down and talk to you for hours, and I'm like, yo, like.
Well, they didn't have anyone calling them. That's different. But I just like to clarify one thing. Like in the chat, Sarah's like, oh, no one says anything about the YouTubers shooting without permits. They actually do. And a lot of YouTubers actually do have to require permits to shoot in certain places. It's actually, or they get sued by the
on a wall. No one.
They also get a lot of
another thing down about the YouTubers.
Yeah, you get or it gets taken down, or they have to give the monetization to
the YouTubers get a lot of sponsors too, though.
Oh yeah,
Well,
another
yeah,
thing.
but
I
they
mean, like,
still
you have
need
5
to.
viewers, no one is saying shit to you. You only have to worry
No.
about that when you actually start making
Yeah,
money.
but I'm saying like if you're a major YouTuber, if you're a medium to well-known
Yes.
YouTuber, you still have to pay for those.
Well,
But or if they
here's-
figure you out, like last week, I got a freaking copyright claim from Warner Brothers for an Instagram video that didn't even have anything to do with Warner Brothers. Like it sounded similar to a score of a movie or something because I was at an orchestra. I was at a theater and I was recording an orchestra performance that was free, mind you. It was like from a local orchestra in my state, and they were like, "Oh, we're copyright claiming it from Warner Brothers," and I'm like, "What?" And then I was like, "Would you like to rebuttal this?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" And then I was like, "Sir, this is a free event with like a local orchestra playing. If this is some copyrighted music, I did not know, but yeah, it was really weird." So I feel like anything they can, if you're small, they see an opportunity to get paid there, they might take that too, honestly, because
well,
it's scary.
the thing
That's
is with
pretty
the
fucking good.
YouTubers is that
Like
so
you can't, maybe they can't afford a permit right off the top until they start making money. That sounds insane. Like,
well you don't know. They might have the
That's-
gift of gab, like Brent said. But the thing is with the YouTubers is that they're not using, like, a lot of them are just using phones. A lot of them are using GoPros. A lot of them are using like,
So they don't get caught.
yeah. So it's like I said it a couple meetings ago. Like we have all these police agencies in DC. So like when I go out and shoot, and the second my tripod hits the ground, like I'm surrounded. Like they're like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Da, 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 da. But if a YouTuber can go and like take his little GoPro out and nobody will say anything to him because like they don't, oh, he's just taking, pictures. But like when I go out, it's a big difference. So YouTubers can get away with a lot of stuff just because their equipment is different. They're not using the same industry standard equipment. A lot of them aren't, but some of them are. But
Again,
Yeah,
guys,
like right when they see you have a crew, or right when
get
they see
caught.
you have like a guy using a boom operator, you have a boom operator using a mic, and you're having a camera, and then they start getting on you. But
yeah.
usually, if
As
it's
far as the
somebody taking
house,
pictures or somebody having a video, nobody bothers them because everybody's doing it.
as far as like shooting and not being able to shoot in your own home, because someone said that they heard of that. It could be a case of them not owning the home yet. It was the bank's property, so maybe there was something in the contract, or it could be like a rental or something like that, or the land could be like a homeowners association,
pretty
where
much
they have like a crap ton of rules and certain regulations and stuff like that.
I'm going to answer V's question real quick. She said, would workers' comp cover what's going on right now, like testing and waivers for health risks? No. One of the things actually said that they had to implement a new, they were one of the brokers. I think it was this one, Front Row, but I'm not sure. But one of them were saying like they were one of the only brokers who are using a specified policy for COVID. Nobody else had implemented it yet. I don't know when that video was shot, but I'm just saying like it just shows that they weren't ready for it and they didn't have it under workers' comp or any other kind of liability.
Probably got trying to sign a waiver, but like, yo, listen.
Yeah, it was a special kind of policy that you had to put in to get it. It wasn't covered on other policies.
Yeah. Just like flood insurance in some areas, you don't get to put in flood insurance regardless. They just don't allow you to, and then, or hurricane or something like that. It's weird.
Yeah. If somebody wants to nitpick you, they are going to. It's like one of those things. Like you could be following most of the rules, and if somebody wants to piss you off, they'll just find some fucking little detail that you've missed, or some loophole. You know how it's like when you're dealing with like lawyers and shitty people that have just like, how am I gonna make this person's life hard?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put lawyers with the shitty people. Not every lawyer's shitty.
No, I'm not saying every.
No, I know. Let's move on.
No, but yeah.
I'm saying that mentality.
Sorry. No, I get what you mean.
Yeah, that's why it's also important to, when you are looking for production insurance, it's important to look at reviews of the company, look at how they treat their customers. Do they contact you immediately? Do they put you first? Do they answer questions politely? Or are they just trying to get you to buy some policy? Because, you know, some insurance companies, just like anything else, will try to just not pay. Even if something happens, they'll be like, oh, well, that specific thing wasn't really covered, or you didn't say that you had this kind of mic, you just said a mic, or, you know, whatever, like, or you didn't say you had 2 of those, you only had 1, and so we're going to say we covered the other one. And they might, you know, they might have a valid reason to do it, but usually they're just trying to like get out of it as best they can. And so you want to be sure to review the companies, make sure you're getting a good insurance, production insurance broker. And you can't just get any insurance broker. It has to be specifically for production. A regular insurance coverage isn't going to cover what you need to cover. So. But yeah, so this is just like on the screen right now. This is what a certificate of insurance looks like. This is what you'd print out and have. You'd have it signed.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
But I just mean that in life in
red tape.
general. You like seriously, you could get like you could just be living your life, not even making films, not doing anything, and like you have a bad neighbor, like you own a house, and they'll just like nitpick you about like fine is. Like some people are just assholes. They walk around and they make other people fun. That's all I'm saying. And you want to avoid those people. Do not invite them on the team. No.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody have any questions about insurance or comments, or do we want to move on to location stuff?
That makes sense. It's good to know all this stuff. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks. I never knew about this. I mean, I knew, but I just, you know, I didn't know in detail. So I'm glad I can like look into this and kind of learn about it.
It's like the same thing. You accidentally say the wrong thing in like 99% of the time. No problem. It only is that one fucking.
Okay, Sarah, obviously you got some feelings. Maybe you need to work through them. Not here though.
Yeah, no, I understand. Like, if a person wants to screw you over, they'll try to screw you over no matter what. That's always good to be nice to people, because, you know, sometimes they try to screw you over if you're too nice and firm. You know,
man, that's life, man. Everybody.
That's what I'm saying. Like one bad neighbor, one bad family.
Okay, we get
it. All right, let's move on.
So, guys, trust me. Like I get private messages. Like, "Are you done? Are you done?" So, like,
yeah,
not just you.
All right. Location release forms. This is what we were just talking about. You're gonna need this anytime you get a location, whether or not you already have like a permit from the city. I think you still need to get a location release form from the city itself. I don't know, but I would always try and just double check and make sure. But usually, well, especially any private place, you need to have a location release form, or what's called a location agreement, which just kind of goes over these different things, like you're not liable if stuff happens, or they're not liable if stuff happens. So you kind of go over who's responsible for what, come to an agreement. And the location release form also has kind of like the price that you're going to pay, if you're going to pay one at all, or if they're going to let you voluntarily have it, how long you're going to have it, and when.
Oh, some actually do, because Angel said, oh, it'd be helpful for insurance companies to have packages for different types of productions. They do actually. The major one that we were, not major, but like the one that's more known for independent crews has them depending on your budget. And the bigger ones also have like different sections for the type of production.
I'm not sure if it's with us, or it's around us. I know they were talking about in California, so I don't know if it's around Virginia where we are, or if it's on the East Coast, but it was called Athos. They sounded pretty good. Of course, I would look into it, you know, wherever you are, and see if there's any local companies, because they might be cheaper than a big one, or a big.
But also be careful, because don't be like, oh, this is super cheap. Read the stuff. Make sure.
I'll put it in the chat, the name of the one we were seeing, but
that kind of thing. Yeah, apparently that's a really well-known one in California. So like we saw them on the Indie Film House podcast.
Oh, another thing I forgot to mention about the whole insurance thing is, if you get to the point where you're going to shoot in another country, you got to be sure to that is included in whatever policy you're getting. You got to make sure that it's also international, especially if you get to the point where you're doing so
and
many
another state, that too.
Yeah, all across the states and other countries, depending on where you think you're going to shoot. Especially if you're going to get like to the point where you're making so many productions a year that you get that annual one. You want to make sure it covers a lot of stuff. And if it doesn't, and you're going to shoot in Canada, or you're going to shoot in Mexico or in Europe, you want to make sure that you do a special add-on for that one production to make sure you're covered. Because the annual is probably going to be more basic for just general everyday stuff, not for specific things like going to another country. So anyway, moving on, location release form. So the 5 main things you want to have in a location release form is the time of the shoot, the specific location of the shoot, compensation for the property owner, unless they're offering it voluntarily, restrictions set by the owner. So anything they say, like, you can film here, you just can't go to this corner of the building because it might collapse. So, be sure to stay on this side. And then you have to write that into the permission agreement. And then you want the signatures from the producer and the property owner. You always want to include permissions to access the location, record in the location, and that you own the footage of once it's recorded. So you want to make sure to specify things like that, because you want to make sure you're not that they're not going to try to steal your footage and say, well, they shot on my property later. Like, no, he signed this thing that says I have permissions to the footage. Because there could do a legal loophole to say, oh, well, I told him he could shoot here. I didn't tell him he got the footage. So you got to make sure you're very specific and outline what you actually want from this location and put it into this.
And also they could claim it as theirs because it was shot in their location, that kind of thing.
Include what the specific production is, the name of it, what's it going to be used for, where it will premiere. Is it going to be in theaters? Is it going to be online? What kind of content is it? Is it a documentary? Is it a short story? Like, what is it? And you want to include that stuff in it. You also want to include if you may need it for additional time. So maybe you get the location for one day, and then you can add a clause in there sometimes saying, like, if we need to come back for pickups, you will allow it on a certain day you specify, something like that. You can add all sorts of things into these kinds of contracts, but you want to make sure that you're both in agreement and you both understand what you want from each other. Include that the filmmaker is under no obligation to use the footage captured as well. So that's something like, if you get it, you shoot it, and then you realize it's not going to work for the film, you're under no obligation to put it into your film or your video or whatever your production may be. Make sure to add that into the agreement. And if there's any alterations to the property that will be done, you want to be sure to add that too. If you're going to do anything, add a door, if you're going to put up a fake wall, whatever you're going to do on the property, you want to make sure to add it in there so that they know what's happening. They agreed that you can do that and that you will set it back to the way it was before you started filming. So those are the main things you want to put in a location release form.
Right.
And, the more specific it gets, you might be like, we need to have, if you're going to do special effects, we're going to have a fake wall that has a hole, that bullet hole, and all this other stuff. You have to put it in there to make sure they know what's coming, and you can't just do whatever you want. So yeah, just specify, guys, and be sure what you need and what they need, and then come to some kind of agreement and payment or credit, whatever they want. There's all sorts of different variations of these. So there's a lot of templates online that you can get and then kind of write in your own. So that's probably what I would do, is just kind of get one. And then honestly, what I would do is see the structure of it and see the wording and then kind of make my own.
Right.
With the specifics of what I need, and then kind of have like a general template that I add specifics to later.
Right. That comes with a PowerPoint where you can go in and make adjustments on Microsoft Word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. You're the best.
No problem. All right, guys. Does anybody have any questions or comments about location release? Has anybody used it? Or how scary was it when you didn't use it? I know that James had some.
I'd never used it, but I didn't do much more than student films, but I guess I just did it guerrilla style.
Yeah.
So maybe I got lucky. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
The thing with that is, oh, hold on. Raphael, no, you don't get to modify it after the form is signed. You modify it beforehand. So you can't.
Yeah, but is it still like legally binding if you like do anything with it?
Well, yeah, because you're setting the agreement. They're signing the contract. It's a contract between two people, and it's like, I'm going to pay you this amount. That's always going to change. So you have to change that type of stuff. And then it's like, I'm going to do this, and they're going to put whatever they want into it as well. So you got to make an agreement with them and write it into the contract. And that's what it's for, to kind of have a written and verbal understanding of what they're agreeing to with their property and what you're agreeing to with payment or credit or whatever you're giving them in compensation for their property. For the wait, what? Release form, James said release forms at least, and I had to have an actor sign a nudity release form for that one scene. He has his pants on. You mean off?
Oh,
Yeah, that's another thing. Like for actors and crew, you're gonna need to have different, and we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, for the location, that's pretty much all of it.
Yeah. Crazy. There's a lot to like, cover and, put in, no. So it's like becomes very difficult to start getting things off the ground, I guess. I guess that's when it helps to like do specific contract work.
Yeah, it helps to like, and to have people that know about this stuff. Like,
yeah, definitely. You need like, no one is going to be an expert at every single area. I mean, I think it's good to have a general understanding of all areas and then continually get better at each area. But yeah,
that's why you need, and that's why you have a crew too, because you have someone that can worry about this and someone that can worry about that.
Yeah,
because pre-production, there's a lot of things going on at once, and you want to make sure that everything's getting covered so that you're ready for production.
Like one of the videos, me and Coda were talking about it. One of the videos, the guy came up to the insurance person and they didn't have a list of equipment. And like they were disagreeing because he was like, well, why are you even coming to me if you don't have a list of equipment yet? Because like he can't worry about that if you don't do your part and know.
You couldn't get insurance on it if he didn't know what equipment they were going to use, and they didn't know what equipment they were going to use because they had to rent it. So they needed to know how much the equipment was how much the insurance was going to cost. So they were fighting over it. And you'll have that in a production because there's a lot of things relying on each other, sort of like that, especially on a limited budget. But
because obviously you can't have one person do everything. It's way, way, way too much. And that's why it's important to have a crew that you can count on, that you can rely on, that know their stuff.
Because what they should have done is come up with this is what we want, but this is what we will settle for equipment list. And then he can go in and say how much the insurance price would be for this camera, how much it could be for that, and figure out, okay, guys, you have to get that camera and I'll get this insurance policy, and then everything's covered. But if nobody's doing anything because they're waiting on the other person, that's when problems start to happen, because production starts to come and they're like, hey, do we have everything covered? And no, we don't have insurance. So it's like, we don't have equipment either yet. So
that's why team is important.
V asks, can these forms be pulled from the internet, or do we have to seek legal advice on how to draft our own? So I've seen a lot of people.
I was gonna ask something similar.
Okay.
Like real talk. Do you always have to go to a lawyer, or like can we actually use stuff like that? Or is it always
pull it from the internet and be fine? I think as long as it's a contract that's stating what's happening and they sign it, I would say it's fine. I would say also, if your budget is high, yes, get a lawyer. And I'd also say if it's something very specific, like, hey, we're gonna set this patch of land on fire, and you're agreeing to this.
Definitely get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer for something very damaging to the property. But just for general shooting, I feel like I've seen people just download these forms and be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people download forms that, to be somebody's landlord, and then just make up papers. So
The
once it's a
important
legal
thing,
binding document and you get it notarized, should have no problem, with
the
the
important thing is knowing it's the right document, knowing it has the things you need and the things you want, not, making sure that it has everything all
Like I
laid out.
said, the more specific the contract, the better, because then it's like, look what they signed. If there is any problem later on, it's like, I said everything that was happening in this production, and they signed
right,
their names at the top, their signatures at the bottom, the dates there, and I gave them a copy and all this other stuff. So, then you got yourself covered more often than not. And
right.
if you're
But
on a low budget production, like, I don't think the location persons, they're not going to really get anything out of suing you because you don't have money. So if you own like a small production company, they might just, they can sue you and bankrupt that company, but what are they going to get? A few $100s maybe? Like, so there's really not that much of an incentive for them to do that. They could try to get you to take down your video or your movie, and then you'd have to kind of fight them on that. Like, no, I have your release form.
right,
But
Like I said, if you know the
they
basics,
say it's really rare. Like, don't get all scared and discouraged, guys. They say it's rare that these things happen.
Yeah.
But you always want to cover yourself because occasionally, rarely, they do happen.
and like Lakota was saying, it's just keeping documents to cover yourself. Like, just it have many things you could guide yourself, templates, but like you guys were saying, when it comes to like a real big major production, like you're trying to set the backyard on fire and you got a fire truck coming, you might want to get a lawyer to look over some of these documents.
Yeah, because you're probably also going to need a safety inspector on set and have that location and all this other things.
Fire inspection.
The higher the production gets and the more complicated the shots or the scenes, the more people you need and the more like lawyers and like maybe cops on the side or firefighters on the side if it's something with fire or someone.
Hire a private security company.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it, but that's for the really big productions. This is just a way to kind of watch your back, make sure you're trying to add everything in. And I know it's probably scary to be like, what if I left something out? Or what if I can't modify this the way I want? But I feel like if it's in the contract, it's good. And if you leave something out, it's probably not that big of a deal that you left it out.
Well, make a list. I would recommend, if it were me, I would make a list of, before making the contract, I would make a list of the most important things. I would need the most important things, things that would be good to have, like a tier list, And
to be honest, not to cut you off, Priscilla, they have lawyers that you can go to just revise a document to make sure you exercise all the legal terms and stuff like that in the contract, and then they'll sign off on it, and that's it. It don't cost that much money for them to review it.
I was gonna say, actually,
there are companies that do stuff like that where it's just like, you might pay $20 to $100 to get them to do something really professional and make sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say paralegals actually. I don't know. I think it varies very much from state to state, but I know friends of mine who have gotten like documents checked with paralegals instead of lawyers because they're cheaper, and basically most of the time they're the ones doing the stuff anyway. When it's like a big firm or whatever, and it's like a simple document to check over, most of the time it's paralegal doing it. So if you know someone, or if you know a paralegal, and you can ask, hey, can you look over this? How much would you charge just to look over this?
Right.
That might be an option.
Yeah, but either way, it's just a way to have a paper trail and to have a confirmation that they agreed, without this being like, well, they said. You have a signature, an address, a date, and their name on it, as well as your company and your name of the production, so that everybody knows you both agreed that this day you could shoot and blah, 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 blah. So it's just a way to have some more proof in case something bad does come your way, where the location person gets really annoying later on, which hopefully never happens and rarely does.
Yeah.
Just in case, you want to watch your back.
Yeah, don't be scared by this paper. We got Priscilla and Lakota.
we'll make sure to set up our stuff. But I'm not going to claim responsibility for all your guys.
Yeah, you better. I'm
I'll
writing
help
a
you, but I'm
document
not
saying
claiming
you look it over.
responsibility that you guys have it all perfectly.
Oh, I was muted. I was gonna say I'm no lawyer. Don't.
I don't
put
care
that
if you're a
with me.
lawyer. You got no choice, bro. This is part of the team. This is what you signed up for. Look, Priscilla.
I didn't sign up for like
Oh yeah.
dude, I'm responsible for our production, for the basics.
Oh, so you being
if you
selfish?
guys are on
What is
some
our
like
production now? It's all about you now and Lakota. It's not about us.
ours as in the collective, ours as in the group, Brent. No drama.
I'm messing
All
with
right,
you. I'm
guys.
messing
Does
with
anybody
you.
have any questions or comments about location release forms before we move on to the last bit and then call it a night?
Because we hungry.
What that got to do with me? Then you should have ate earlier before you got on here.
We couldn't. We were working on a million things.
I don't want to hear any
I'm gonna
excuses.
exit out of this then, guys. Next thing, last thing.
I'm not eating for you.
I have a kind of a question. I don't know if anyone would know the answer to this, but you were talking about distributors and everything requiring insurance to cover the errors and omissions and things that might not have been signed and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious as to if anyone knows if like film festivals, like say you're a student filmmaker and you shoot your film and you don't get anyone to sign anything and you just have a complete project and you send it to a film festival, are they going to require you to show them any documentation of any of this stuff, or is it just kind of
that was
not a
something
big
they were
deal?
talking about. If you are going to distribute your film, they need to know that the release forms you sign the release form so that they don't get in trouble if some actor is like, I don't want to be in this anymore.
Right.
And
so
then
it's
ends up
not distributing exactly, but it is kind of along the same lines. Like they most do, especially the bigger ones. They're going to require all this type of stuff to make sure that they are covered, because they don't want to show something in their festival that the location manager or the actor or the crew member can get mad about because they're in a part of the shot and they don't want to be,
I had to do that before for a student film, and they were trying to enter into the film festival. I think it's the Australian or British, one of them, and I had to sign a release form just stating that I was part of it, and I'm consenting to whatever they using my name for and my face, whatever the case is.
And that's a problem right there. They used it after the fact, which if Brent was a dick, he could be like, you know what, pay me $50 and I might.
Right.
He could have tried to get something out of it.
Or he was
now
smart.
They need him to sign it. Beforehand, if he didn't sign it, they could have said, well, we're getting another actor. So either sign it or get out.
Right.
So, but now after the fact, they're at the mercy of Brent to decide if he wants to sign it for him or if
oh, that sounds scary.
No, but like that's why you always want to make sure to have these things in pre-production and beforehand, because locations and just hunting people down in general is probably a lot more difficult.
It is a lot. It's better to get it out of the way in pre-production before you even go to that. That's a lot.
Right, because then you got to go find where they were, like remember where they lived or whatever, or remember their contact information, and then contact them and get it either emailed or printed out or some other way, or go to their house and get them to sign it. It's just a lot of hunting down and remembering, wait, who did we forget and who was all on set? It's a lot of stuff. So,
and just to add in closing what Lakota was saying, sometimes they be having these food trucks, man, that these companies be hiring. You can get sick of food poisoning, salmonella over these damn trucks, and I don't know how you gonna get around that.
Yeah, I mean that would probably go with workers' comp, being sick from it, but it depends if it's on set or if it's after the fact, I guess.
Yeah, that's good.
All right,
Thanks,
so
guys.
Crew release forms. Crew is mainly like the release forms would be they release their voice, their either their picture or whatever. If you're using behind the scenes, you're probably going to capture some of the crew. So you want to make sure the crew signs the release forms. so that in case they do appear in any of the behind the scenes, that you're allowed to show it. They give you permission. And the actor, the same thing. Like, you want to make sure definitely that you have permission to use them in your movie. Because like I was saying, if 5 years down the line or 2 months from now, once you're finished shooting, they go, you know what? I don't like this movie. I don't like the way my character's portrayed. I feel like people are going to say I'm a jerk now because my character's a jerk in the movie. I don't want to be in it. And you didn't get this form, then you're not really going to be able to show it anywhere, and it's kind of going to be buried.
Another thing would be if you're shooting in a location and there are people around you that aren't part of the production, to make sure to blur their faces as well, because you don't want any of those people showing up or seeing, hey, I'm in that, I'm gonna go sue them because they use my face without my consent.
Yeah, so anybody who's in the film at all, like whether they have a speaking role or not, they'll need to sign a actor release form. All release forms need to clearly define what is being released, which is like pictures, video, their voice, their likeness. Our release form should specify that the owner of the forms can sell or assign the right to a third party. So if I get Brent to come on my movie, I get him to sign a thing. I make sure to say, Brent, I have the ability to sell your likeness in my film and your behind the scenes footage to another company if they want to buy it. So if I do get a distributor, Brent says I'm allowed to sell it to them. And so that those rights that he transferred to me transferred to them. And so you need all these forms for when you're getting a distributor or anything like that.
And you got to feed me.
Yeah, that would be in a different form, but the release form is just for saying that you allow me to use your likeness, your voice, your pictures,
Right.
whatever else, in anything promotional, the actual principal production, whatever it was, show, movie, and any and I can like give it to whoever I want, pretty much. Like I can sell it and try to promote this movie, try to promote this thing however I want, and use you because you're the actor in my movie. And
Right.
I can use you in the poster. I can use you, your picture
Right.
to show like who's in the movie and the behind the scenes, all this different things. So
It's something like with Dave Chappelle when he violated his contract, whatever, got out, and they were able to start shooting some of his skits, and he wasn't getting paid or something like that. Can't remember exactly what happened, but it was some forms or something like that he didn't sign. I can't remember the whole story, but I gotta look it up. Something similar to what you're saying.
Sarah, if something goes really wrong, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, like you could be thinking you're signing up for, like, say you're signing up for something and then it gets completely changed to a point where it no longer works for you or something, and then now you're at a point where, like, where does that fall under? You know what I mean? Like if somebody changes the whole
that's the reason for these forms. It's to protect the people who are creating it, so that if you do get upset about the way it turned out, you can't sue them. You can ask them to not do it, but I mean, if you're like the main actress in the thing, then they're gonna want to use it because they spend all this time and money. So even if it turns out like completely changed from what it originally was, this contract still allows them to use your image and your voice and all that in promotion.
And so my point is, how does one protect themselves on the other end? Because it's all made to protect the people with the money.
Well, not necessarily. Think about an independent
it's a
one.
contract,
like
so like
you agree to do a job. If last minute you pull out of that job, that's not like, oh, you guys are taking advantage of me. It's like, well, you agree to do this job and now you're backing out. Like,
well,
we invested all in this. So like you have to think about it like if it were your movie and someone was like, I'm not doing this anymore, and you put all this money and effort and time into it.
Yeah,
or they didn't like the final product.
Yeah, like because it might not turn out the way you think it's going to, and you just have to be
depending on what it is. Like if it's a crew member, I would just let them go, because that's replace it when it comes to an actor or something and you need to finish the movie. Now you have a major
problem.
But
you also have cases of actors, for example, like in Hollywood, I'm sure it happens all the time. I think I've heard a few times of like, I don't like my performance. I don't I don't want this movie out. And they did everything in their power to like make the movie not able to be finished or not be released. Like that happens. Like
Well, in
actors
that
don't like
case,
their performance or unhappy.
if you're the
Directors.
actor, you should be very careful and not like take just any job acting one.
So like
to,
that's
like,
why
if you're
that's
acting-
why
Exactly.
that's why as an actor or a crew member you need to be aware of what this contract says, and if you feel like
crews
you,
easier.
like you just don't
If you don't
sign it.
feel
You
safe,
would just
yeah,
be
if
like,
you don't
"No,
feel
I'm not gonna
inspired, if you
sign
don't
it."
feel like,
They decide whether they can keep you on or not, and that's a risk they might take if they really feel like they need you as an actress. But most likely they're just going to be like, well, we're going to have to get another actress then because we need someone to sign this, because they don't want to put in all that work, because there's plenty of times when people don't like the outcome of something, when the book writer gives the rights to make a movie and then they're like, oh, I hate the way you made this movie, it doesn't represent my book. Well, you signed those rights, so we didn't make this whole movie just so you could say no, never mind. Like, so it's a very,
That's why.
and yeah, sometimes it does suck. Sometimes, like for example, the book writer might have made a deal and the director completely changed the story, or the writers completely changed the story, and that sucks. And that's why in the contract you would negotiate, like for example, if you're the writer, that oh, I would like my story to remain intact, for example. Like you're not allowed to change anything or whatever last minute or something. And that's why negotiations happen, and that's why reading contracts are important.
that's why a lot of people get screwed over too, because they're not reading all the stuff that's in the contract, because certain things, like another thing they say is if you're releasing these forms, you want to make sure to also include that it is irrevocable. So for the it's no time, there's no time that it ends.
No statute of limitations.
Yeah, like you get this release and it's indefinite, it stays forever. So
because some have like a 10 years, like 10 years later, okay, or something like that.
Yeah, like I
contracts are
know
only
big
valid for a
companies
certain
will do
period of
that
time.
with their contracts. They'll say like you can't appear in these types of movies, or you can't, do this or that in their contracts. But for like a lower production, it would just be like mainly like we get to use this film, and you don't get to change your mind later about letting.
Yeah, I don't like contracts and stuff. I don't like that.
Well, contracts are good. They're to protect you
If you're on the
and
end
to
of being a
protect.
production, though, I think you would like them.
Yeah, like
I said, if you're on the other end of it, if you're this production that's doing this movie and one of the actors decides they don't like it, what about all the rest of the actors? What about all the rest of the crew? What about, so that's a lot of stuff.
yeah. So contracts aren't bad. They're for protection. People take advantage of them sometimes, or people sometimes, I mean, let's be real. Sometimes people just don't read them and they get taken advantage of because they're letting themselves take advantage. Yes, sometimes they're screwed over.
You shouldn't take a job under pressure. If they're pressured,
definitely not.
Sometimes you have to, and like.
But if you guys are like going over, explaining what this contract means, if I have you in one of my productions, we're gonna go over my form. We're gonna say what it means, what I'm able to do, what you're able to do, and work out some kind of agreement. So I wouldn't you shouldn't join something that's trying to be like, just sign it, okay? Who cares? You don't need to read it.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah, like why? Why do they not want you to read it?
Or why are they not giving you time to go through it? For example,
so on the other
end, let me take it home and go through it, and they're like, no, we need it signed today, right now, blah blah blah. It's like, well, either you let me go through it, or I'm not signing it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's like these things that you don't actually really know, so. Or like you can get like really good to just sign stuff by people, and then it can just be fucking shitty all around. So
I feel like contracts can be good for everyone involved if they negotiate, if they read, and if you make sure you're not being taken advantage of.
Yeah, I guess like for me, I'm not as concerned about like small stuff because I'm like, but I mean like fuck.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be scummy people who try to take advantage of other people, but in general these forms are just to protect the overall production, in case there is some kind of dispute, in case there is some kind of argument. they still have the rights to be able to use the footage that it was captured, unless they want to try to get, you know, if you're not that big of a part, they might just be able to either change your scenes or cut your scenes out, and okay, no problem. But if you're like a main actor in there, you need to, you know, like they're gonna make sure that you sign these things, and that they probably are not gonna reshoot everything. They're probably gonna keep it the way it is.
Just like how in a contract with you, like if you're negotiating your contract, you will want these rights, you will want these things to protect you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everything in life, necessary. It's all about being wise and making sure that no one's taking advantage of you, that you're doing your research, that you're doing your part as well. Because you can't always blame them if we don't do our part, if we don't research, if we don't like take the time to know what we're doing, know what we're signing.
Yeah. All right. So another thing I'd like to point out, guys, is if the person's under 18, you can't have them sign it, of course. You have to get a signature from a parent or a legal guardian. And you might even want to get a kind of a specific cast or crew release form that says the parent is allowing them to be in this, and they're allowing this to happen, and they're signing the right that they can be, that their image can be used and all that other stuff. So if they're under 18, you got to make sure to get parent or guardian. If you don't get a release form from the actors, they can force you to remove the content from wherever it's released. So like we were just saying, if you don't have this and one of the actors decides that they don't like the way it turned out, or they just don't like that movie or whatever the reason, they can say, you know what, you don't get to show it in theaters anymore. I don't want to do it. And then the production company actually does have to figure out how to cut them out or reshoot the scenes. And it puts the production back a lot, and a lot of costs and stuff involved. So that's why they always try to make sure to get these kinds of things signed and figured out beforehand. If crew don't want to be seen or heard in the behind the scenes or the promotional content, there is also the option that you can blur their face and digitally change their voice. But it's much easier when they sign the release and you just try not to capture them. If they're willing to, and you kind of have an agreement of like, I'll try as hard as possible to make sure this behind the scenes, whoever's shooting it or taking pictures, is not going to capture you or your likeness. But just in case they see like the back of your head or side of your face, can you sign this release form? You know, and then maybe, and then you can still blur their face and whatever if they are caught. But if something slips by and they're in a crowd or whatever, and they don't want to be in the behind the scenes, it covers the production still, just in case. And then they can always just reach out to you and say, can you please blur my face and whatever later on. But it's always better for the production company to have these things to watch their back.
Sophie asked, what about those instances when you're in public and there's a sign saying filming in progress? Sometimes you see faces blurred. Is that a requirement or from a complaint, or is the sign enough?
So the crowd thing, one of the things they said is if it's a big enough crowd, then you can't really get everyone's signature. So you do just kind of put the sign up, and you do have someone kind of, you have on the sheet, they usually have like if you don't want to be seen, contact this person. And then they contact your production manager or whoever, and meet up with them to say like, hey, I don't want to be seen in this thing. And then they blur the face, alter the voice, or stuff like that. So, but generally when it's a big crowd, they have that sign. And if those people still, like if it's a crowd in a, let's say it's a, I don't know, what am I thinking? It's a theater play and there's a bunch of people in the crowd, and they're just actually going to a real theater play, and you're just happening to shoot it. You're going to put up those signs that say shooting will be in progress or filming in progress. If you walk in and sit down without calling this number, you agree to you'd be able to be seen. And that's kind of like a general waiver or a release form for the crowd, because you're not going to be zooming in on any individual, most likely. And then, you know, if they don't decide to call that person, you have, well, we posted up the sign and everybody else saw it. And But it's always good if you can, if it's a small crowd, like 5 to 10 people, if you can, just get them all to sign it. And if they don't want to, then you can know who to blur out. Also, you want to include a waiver and release of liability in the case the person gets hurt on set or even up to death. Like if they die on the set somehow, you want to include some kind of release that says, you want to include in the release that says that the company's not liable. Of course, if you have the insurance and they get hurt, that insurance is going to cover it, but it's to protect you from being sued later on by the people. If they break their arm or they break their leg, your insurance is going to cover that. And inside the form itself, it'll say that you have that insurance, but that just covers their medical costs. If their leg never works the same again, or their arm never works the same again, and they try to sue you later, that's why in this release form you'll have that.
And that's another thing. That is why when they're asking you to sign a release form, it's good to see if they have insurance or not. Because, okay, I can't sue you if something happens, but if something happens, will you be able to cover my medical bills? Will you be able to cover the cost?
Yeah, so as an actor or a crew member, you want to make sure that the company has, or the production has, that insurance to cover you. And as the production company, you want to make sure you have it to cover them, and those release forms and the waivers to make sure that you are not held liable later on if they get hurt, that they can't sue you or try to do anything about it, because that's just a really big hindrance on the production company and the production itself.
Yeah, and again, it's not always like, oh my gosh, they're so evil. They want to make sure that, like, you decided, I'm up for this. I'm gonna, like, let's say there's a stunt. You sure? Okay, you consent to this, you agree to this. If anything happens, we're gonna cover your medical bills. You have to make sure that's a thing. But also, if there's any other damage, like, you consented to this, so like we cover our end.
Yeah, if there's any long-term psychological or physical damage, like now you're afraid of heights because you fell off this thing and got hurt, that company can't be held liable because you signed this release form. So it's to cover everyone. Like, it's to cover the production needs to be covered in all angles. Whenever you're making your own production, you've got to make sure to cover it from everything, because these things do rarely happen, but when they do, it's bad. And if you don't have these things,
because you can have all the precautions in place, you can be super safe and accidents still happen. So it's good to protect everyone involved, All
right. Lastly, anyone who appears in the film at all, if it's voiceovers, if it's a principal cast, background actors, even if it's just people that appear in a photograph and that's it, you still want to get these actor release forms so that you can make sure you have them in your movie. Oh, by the way, this on screen is the minor talent release agreement. So if it's a minor, you can use something like this. I found all these online. They're just free templates, so I'm sure you guys could find something just like this if you needed it. And it covers what it is, and you kind of just input your information. You want to make sure in these release forms you have the production number. If you're running multiple productions, you have the production number, production title, what the title of the movie or the project is, the director's name, the producer's name, the production company as well, all on the form. And then you want to have the date and make sure they sign it and that you sign it. If you do get one of these forms where it says, like right here, where it says picture, that's where you would input your production name, the name of the movie or the name of the project, whatever it is. And lastly, be sure that actors use their legal names and not their performing names. So if you have Miley Cyrus, you can't use Miley Cyrus. You have to use
Destiny Hope
Cyrus.
Well, I think she actually changed it back to Miley now. But
okay. But if it's their legal, whatever their legal name is, you just got to make sure they sign it with that. and not with their performer name, because then that's not legally held liable. And then lastly, you need all these forms anyway if you're trying to distribute it, or if you get a distributor to try to sell your movie.
Hopefully we don't get copyright just for saying her
They're
name.
going to require right away. A lot of the videos were saying this. If you ever try to get a distributor, the first thing they're going to ask is, do you have the location and crew release forms, location, crew, and actor release forms, and do you have the what was it? The E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. Those are the few things they're going to ask right up front. And then, they might go into more detail about different things, but those are the main things that you got to make sure you have. So, does anybody have any questions about that stuff? Actor release forms, crew release forms. Everybody good?
V said, what if it says name and likeness?
Likeness kind of generally covers how you look, how you sound. If they capture
basically your likeness is your look. So like if they use your name, they can use your name and your likeness, as in your name and your face.
No, the likeness isn't about a stage name. It's just about the actual like physical you, your voice, your look, everything about you. Your likeness is that's the general cover of all those things.
And you have a stage name. Can you put both legal and stage name? She's asking.
No, on legal forms, you would have to put a legal name, just like a company. Like my company is legally named LCloud Productions, LLC. So on my legal forms, I would actually have to have that name, not LCloud Productions or anything else, because it's legally binding. So it needs to have both parties' legal names on the contract.
That's another thing to look out for. If you're a production company and someone's signing, make sure that's their legal name that they're signing with. If you're an actor, make sure that the company is signing with their entire name so that they're not screwing you over by only saying like a part of the name.
Oh, the credits would be something else, V. The credits would be on a different form. They'd have like a I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's some kind of credits form where they get everyone's name, who was on the production, what job they did, and what credit they get in the film. And so that you can put your stage name on.
Yeah, because it's not illegal.
But any legally binding contracts, like the release forms and the deal memos where there's telling you how much you get paid and all that other stuff and how many days you'll work and whatever else, those are the things you got to put your legal name on. All right. So yeah, guys, that was everything. I just wanted to share. I made like quite a few documents that I wanted to just kind of skim over. I'll be sending these out to everybody. Actually, before I get into that, let's just talk about this. For Thursday, we're going to be talking about how to film an action scene. I'm just going to look up that, like maybe some tips and tricks about that. Marking actors, that's to do with blocking, and we'll see like how to physically mark where they should go. Blocking actors is probably going to be in the ballpark of that same information. And using stand-ins for lighting and blocking. So like stand-in actors or using crew members to stand in. And we'll be discussing all those things on Thursday. Thursday, we're also going to be looking over everyone's, storyboard. The storyboard project. We'll be checking out everybody's thing. So try to have it ready by Thursday if you can, guys. If not.
Yeah, remember Coda left some, I went to research, but Coda also left some resources in the email he sent you. Links to certain websites or apps or stuff that you can use for storyboard as well. Stick figures, anyone that knows how to play with like those little animation thingies. I'm gonna see if I can find any others, but like I was going to make a list and then I saw Coda had put a bunch, so I'll see if I can find any.
It's all in the email about the storyboard, so we're gonna be checking out that and talking about all those other things on Thursday. But these are just some of these forms I made. I can send these out to you guys and you can adjust it as you want for your own stuff. I don't mind. it's just like, this one was just the terminology that I feel like we'll be using on our sets. Sarah's coming in. And so I just kind of did some of the terminology and explained what they mean. And that's kind of something I might hand out to people if they come on a production of mine. Oh, by the way, once I send these out to everybody, you guys look over them and you feel like something's not quite right. Like I had Brian and James and a few others look over them. And I changed a few things, but if anyone catches anything and says, oh, this, I don't think that's right, let me know and I'll think about changing it. Or, you know, terminology is
like, why is this here? What does that mean? That kind of thing.
And I'll just, yeah, like I'll hand this out to anybody who gets hired on my thing, so everyone kind of has the same general input.
Yeah, I think it's good to have like good rapport and like work with people that are generally good to work with and who are pretty much upfront and honest and don't try to do shady stuff.
Sarah, who hurt you, boo boo? Like.
Yeah, it's always good to like kind of get a sense of who you're going to be working with and try to build a relationship. That's why it's always important. And if anyone's ever pressuring anybody, just, you know, question yourself. Why are they pressuring me? Why are they trying to rush me through this? What are they getting out of this? What am I not seeing? All those things.
Make sure they're, like I said, make sure their legal name is on the contract, their full name. Because they can get you with that too. So
yeah, so this one's just the terminology. And I have my logo up here for my production company.
Isn't it cute?
I'd rather be like on the production side and acting in my own stuff. I don't trust people.
Jeez, not even us. No, that hurt. Okay.
Well, like I will, but
no,
yeah.
I get you. I totally get you. Honestly,
so if my agent looked it over, I probably would feel a lot
I get
better.
you. People can sometimes be unreliable. It's kind of scary. I understand. All right, guys.
Well, it's not just that they say one thing, but they write it in a way that you just miss, and like they could screw you. Oh, I can't stand that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's again, like that's why you have an agent too, so then you can be like, hey, if you really have questions. So that's true. It's all fine.
So if you guys haven't noticed, it's like a camera lens, and then the button. It's adorable.
A little cloud of the camera lens.
That is cute. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother's he works. He's a graphic designer. He actually made it for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he actually designs logos, so it's really cool. He also made the MediaStudies logo. Then I have this one. It's like the kind of in depth for what I feel. If I ever get to a big enough point with my production company, these are the jobs that I feel like would be filled on my sets. Kind of like what they would do in pre-production and in production and post-production if they work during those times. And it just kind of tells you like who they are, what they are, the director, who answers to them, who they answer to, and who answers to them. And then kind of goes through all the different things that they do during pre-production, post-production, and production. And it's just like it's categorized through the different departments. The assistant director department, grip, electric, which is lighting, sound department, art department, all these different things. And I'll be sending this to you guys if you want it, and you can adjust it.
Yeah, I would love that. Thanks.
But it's just like I was looking into it and I was trying to remember like what everyone's specific jobs are, especially with all these forms. Like we're all asking who takes care of these legal binding agreements for locations and stuff. And, you know, that's why I have this to like see, okay, it would be this guy, but if this guy's not around, then it's going to be, you know, someone else is going to have to take up the slack. And then on the tabs on these, I kind of made like what I feel would be, oh, that's really zoomed out. What I feel would be like a skeleton crew, what I could get away with if we only had a certain amount of people, like maybe 15 or less. And then I'm just like, we would have to have at least the 5 members, director, producer, director of photography, location sound, script supervisor, and first AD, like at the bare minimum, very bare minimum. And even then it would be like pretty crazy. So, and then I just kind of put like how much I feel like a budget around that general sense of the crew size would cost. So it'd be like 5,000 or less with volunteers would be something like a skeleton crew budget. And then I just put like micro budget, added the jobs that I feel like could be associated with that. Small budget, medium budget, large budget has everything. And just kind of goes through. There's 67 plus crew positions on my form alone. And that's not including if you double up production assistants and stuff like that. So yeah, so I figured it'd be a good help for anybody who wants it. You can have that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Appreciate it.
And
Yeah,
then,
I'd love to have it sent to me. I'll read it over.
yeah, I'll email all these to you guys right after the meeting.
Sounds great.
There's 3 more. So the one, order of production. This is something I wanted to know, like, because we're learning about all these forms, I was trying to like put it in my head, how would this go? And Brian and some other people gave me some notes and said like their log lines they would put after step 12. But for me personally, I like to think of the overall story first and kind of write out and then adapt it later if needed.
Yeah, so some things are going to be a little more personal to you.
Yeah, and so you can always reorganize these things in whatever way you guys feel like would work best for you. But for my process, I felt like the best way from all the things I know currently, I feel like this is the best way for me and how my productions would work out to where I could have everything in order and just like have everything happening, like call sheets, rehearsals, tech rehearsals, principal photography, all that kind of stuff. So I can send that to you guys as well. And then these, do the shot list first. So the shot list, I made a shot list that I feel like it kind of covers all the things I would want to have in a shot list. And I made it so that once we do a shot list exercise, we can just take this and create a fake exercise, kind of like what we're doing with the storyboard. But we just do it for a shot list instead and see what it's like. I also have different tabs for you guys because I felt like some of you guys might want this, where every time you see these little red corners, you can just zoom over it and it kind of tells you what this is. Let me zoom in a little bit. So it's like the characters that appear in the shot, subject, and it tells you what each thing means. So if you're kind of confused, you can just go onto this tab, notes and explanations, and just kind of see what this means. And if you still don't understand it, there's also, I added another tab, legend and help, which just kind of goes through some of the basic stuff that we've kind of been learning about all of this in this semester, but it's like the camera movements, the kind of camera movements you might use. There's probably more that I'm leaving out, but this was just a general starting point for everybody. And it just has all these different things that are going to be like, this shows all the different acronyms that are used for these shot types. It's an EWS. Like, what does that mean? Well, then you can just come here and look extreme wide shot. And then okay, so if I put EWS right here, it's going to mean extreme wide shot, or extreme long shot if it's ELS, the same thing. But yeah, and then I just kind of put like some basic like an idea of what it would be. And then over here you have like how many minutes the estimated shoot time might take. I actually got this online, the idea for it online, and I added my own stuff into it. So there's a free template that has something kind of like this, and I got that, so I wanted to point that out. I didn't make this exactly from scratch. I just kind of copied someone else's format in a way. But yeah, and then it has like the estimated shoot time. So in minutes, so you got like 90 and 60, so you think that's going to be about 2.5 hours at the end. This adds up all these quantities. This one adds up all these quantities, and that's like the script time, how long in the script it's going to take. So if it's a fourth of a page, then if you're using that general rule of thumb that 1 page equals 1 minute of screen time, then you're going to say script time means a fourth of a page is going to be 0.25 minutes. And then that adds it up right here. And then this column is just to get it in hours. So once you get all your minutes added together, this will take the information from here and convert it to hours, so you see how many hours you expect it to be. And then the last thing I have for you guys, the shooting schedule. So this is another thing I made. I found a template, and I wasn't able to download it, but I kind of just like copied the way it was set up. And I wasn't able to download it because I was actually like at work. So, and when I started on this, but I started working on it, and then I came home and finished it out. And the same thing. It has my logos. It has you would put the name of the project. You'd put which day of shooting it is. This is the shooting schedule. So you would take the information from like the shot list, the storyboard, whatever other, the script breakdown, stuff like that, and you would create your shot list, or whoever you have working for you that is going to do the shot list for you. They could use something like this. And you can put like the time that you expect it to happen, the date. That's for if it changes, if you have to move a scene later to a different day. For this, I just kind of have it day of, so it's each day is going to be its own form. You might have like 30 pages, and it might be 30 days worth of shooting, and then you have one page has all the information for that day, and the next page has all the information for the next day. And it goes on like that. And yeah, it's kind of like a lot of the same information as the shot list. It has like what the shot type is, whether it's day or night, exterior or interior. And then you're kind of just organizing it in a way that makes the most sense from a logistical standpoint. You're going to shoot all the same scenes that are in the same, you're going to shoot all the scenes that are in the same location first, and then you're going to move to the next location. You're not going to go in order of the script because that's going to cost too much time and money. So you're going to go in order of whatever makes sense logistically. And this is a good way. Shooting schedules are a good way to kind of figure out everything, as well as like the script breakdown and figure out where you need to go. So it's just general information. None of this is real. It's just stuff I've been making up. And, obviously you probably wouldn't have 4 more columns before you go move in an hour and a half, but maybe you get 4 shots in an hour and a half. But yeah, and then you just have like company moves. You have the locations, whether it's exterior, you have the actual physical address. You have interior, exterior, day or night, shot type, character IDs, what dialogue is in the scene. If you're doing the whole scene, I would just put something like run whole scene. If it's just one shot of the guy's face or somebody's lips, my dialogue goes here, like whatever they would actually say. And that's just mainly for if you can see their lips moving in the scene. Otherwise, I wouldn't really care about the dialogue to cover. If it's a shot of the back of their head, you're not really going to worry if they're saying the line, whatever line you have for them. Pages, how many pages it is. You do those in 8ths. You break down pages in 8ths. So always put it like if it's 2 pages or if it's 1.5 or 1 6/8. You don't just do 1.5 because that you breaking it in 8ths is a better way to get in a time estimate. And then like any props or special equipment you might need, lighting notes, camera notes. And you have like lunch break. And same thing, you got the tabs. This is just like for copy and pasting for the locations, company moves, the lunch for however many minutes, and a wrap for the day. And then notes and explanations has the same stuff. Scroll over these things, it tells you what all this stuff is. And then legend and help has some of the same information where you will see what you need to put in if you're stumped. So yeah, I just thought that would be cool to share with you guys. But that's everything. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of that?
No, I have to get going anyway, so that's awesome. I look forward to you sending all this and looking over it again, and I will see you guys soon.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for coming.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
All right, guys. I'm going to stop the recording there.